When Lyanna slipped into her mother's war tent, her footsteps light on the sandy floor. The camp overlooked the vast Great Gulf, its calm waters betraying none of the blood spilled for control of Bromlund's fractured kingdom. In return for their aid in reclaiming the capital and restoring the treasury, the Grand Duchy of Stalvolten had acquired vast swaths of Bromlund's land, including the bustling port town where they were now encamped. She moved toward the command table where the latest military reports were mapped out. Colored markers denoted the positions of Allied and enemy forces. Rikuto had succeeded in retaking the capital and stabilizing much of southern Bromlund. Most of the kingdom was under control again, but peace was a mirage. The Empire's intervention ensured an economic reset that would cripple Bromlund for years to come. But when Lyanna didn't care about kingdoms or ports. Not even the mansion her mother planned to build on the shore stirred her interest. Her heart was elsewhere, beyond war, beyond politics. We already have troops en route, when Lyanna. She jumped at the voice behind her, spinning to see Arameliana, her mother, standing tall and proud in the tent's entrance. Your beloved will be in your arms soon, her mother continued. They're riding for Fort Twilight with all haste. When Lyanna blushed.
Thank you, mother.
But what if something's gone wrong? Do not fear what if. Control what is within reach. When Lyanna glanced at the map again, Arameliana sighed and added, there have been no reports of demon attacks near the border forts. We'll reclaim Daniel.
He'll be safe.
But what if he thinks we abandoned him? She whispered. It's been so long. It's only been a few months, Arameliana replied, her voice firm. You should be more upset that he followed that reckless plan. If he had waited for me to respond. He acts on what he believes is right, when Lyanna interrupted softly. He saved 2 lives, jumped in after the princess without hesitation. I think he thought he was protecting us. Her hand clutched a small diamond, the first they had made together. I want to protect him this time. Arameliana's expression softened. And we will. A messenger cleared his throat at the tent's entrance. Your Grace. He handed her a scroll. She opened it and read quickly, eyes narrowing. When was this sent? Nearly a month ago, from Fort Peony. When Lyanna felt a chill as her mother muttered, why? And turned to the map. She took the letter and scanned it, her breath catching. A divine summon went missing, west of the mountains, during a scout mission? He was supposed to be headed for Fort Twilight. They never crossed into Bromlund, Arameliana said, voice tight. The escort must have changed course. Did Rikuto lie to us? No, Arameliana answered. The escort likely acted independently. They must have caught wind of the rebellion before the riders could. By the time we knew, it was too late. The Grand Duchess gripped the table hard. There's a follow-up, Your Grace, the messenger added. She took it, unrolled it, and exhaled in relief.
He was found. A week later. Alive.
Will you send a reply? No letters. We'll send our own riders. Quietly. When Lyanna smiled, the tension in her shoulders easing.
Thank you, mother. And
I'm sorry it came to this. This situation was inevitable, Arameliana said. We needed to secure Bromlund to stabilize our own holdings. Our rule will be better for them in the long term. When Lyanna nodded. I'll return to my research. The diamond-powered tools outperform salt in every test. But they're still scarce. Keep it that way. And how do they handle water? They're completely stable. Just like Daniel predicted. Good. Design something practical. Relief gear, perhaps. And if anyone asks. They're just water vessels. Mysteriously, endlessly full. Arameliana smiled. Exactly. Elsewhere, on the warfront, Karatai stood amidst the rubble of ruined land and fractured hopes. Her people, once children of the Kirin, had joined the Demon Queen's forces to survive. They now followed the restless dragons, beings with enough power to challenge the Queen herself. That power now loomed overhead, as a crimson dragon landed with a bone-rattling crash atop the fortress wall. Behind it came a massive, flightless drake hauling supplies. The human sorcerer they had expected to overwhelm stood below, his figure dwarfed by the monsters before him. Where is your bravado now, pathetic human? Karatai shouted, flames and fury rising in her throat. But a strange sound broke through the air, asterisk crack. Asterisk, like thunder inside her skull. A blinding flash erupted from the dragon's side. The beast faltered, swayed, and then toppled like a felled mountain. Its blood pooled on the stone. Karatai could only stare. Then the sorcerer's voice boomed, amplified by some arcane device. Behold the divine judgment of land, air, fire, water, and darkness.
I.A.M.
The calamity. As he stepped into view, the drake reared back to incinerate him.
Burn him. Karatai screamed. Now.
The drake's fire built in its throat. But before the flames could reach him, the sorcerer fired again.
Another thunderclap. Another eruption.
This time, the drake's head exploded in a burst of searing flame. The blast tossed Karatai into the dirt like a ragdoll. She blacked out before she hit the ground. Moments earlier, Daniel worked his bolt-action rifle like a craftsman. The first shot had pierced the dragon's eye, the second was meant for its kin. With his rifle braced against the rampart, he took careful aim and fired just as the drake exhaled. The resulting explosion was immense, colors so bright they painted day into night. When the smoke cleared, both dragons were dead. Exhausted but focused, Daniel scavenged the battlefield. He discovered enchanted bags, magical storage devices that could hold far more than their size suggested. Using creative tricks to operate them despite lacking magic, Daniel stored everything: supplies, weapons, even the dragons themselves. Hours passed as he methodically cleaned up the field. Among the wreckage, he found survivors, injured women from various races. He bound and treated their wounds, ensuring no one could fight back. Only the Kirin woman remained conscious. When she awoke and tried to fight, he pinned her with a revolver pointed at her chest.
"I just want to talk," he said.
She calmed, and after some back and forth, accepted her fate as his captive. Her people, she explained, honored strength. As the victor, Daniel now owned her loyalty. "I'm not interested in that," he replied, sighing. But her words offered insight. The attack hadn't come from the Demon Queen. The dragons had acted on their own. Rikudo's war room palace of Stalvoltan. Rikudo sat hunched over his desk, rubbing his temples as the candlelight flickered over stacks of reports.
There were wins.
Bromlund had been retaken. Order was slowly returning. Trade routes through the mountain fortresses had reopened. And the Grand Duchy of Stalvoltan was in the midst of solidifying its new treaty. But Arameliana, ever the tactician, had carved out her own advantages. She turned every piece of chaos into an opportunity. Rikudo didn't even resent her for it. She'd helped stabilize Bromlund, rooted out corrupt nobles, and bankrolled half the operation through her own secret coffers. Still, the reports of Daniel gnawed at him. Not only had the divine summon gone missing, he'd resurfaced in an entirely different location, wounded and at Fort Peony, far north and west of where he was originally headed. His escort had apparently diverted when whispers of rebellion reached them. And because the military prioritized supply line integrity, messages had been delayed or lost. Now, Rikudo held a new scroll, one that chilled his blood. Fort Peony had been evacuated. Castle Northwall was preparing for a dragon attack.
And Daniel? He'd stayed behind.
Rikudo didn't need a report to guess why. Daniel had broken their agreement. He'd used Earthborn knowledge to make a weapon. He intended to delay, or worse defeat, the dragons himself. Herales stepped behind him, gently massaging his shoulders. He looked up with a tired smile.
"Thanks, Herales.
You need something?" She smiled back. "Just checking on you.
Are you all right?"
He exhaled slowly. "Seems like things never go quite the way we want." Her touch lingered for a moment before she paused, her gaze shifting toward the side arcade of the room.
Her expression changed. "Who's there?" she snapped. "Show yourself."
The guards at the door stepped forward, swords drawn. Rikudo turned his head, and immediately recognized the presence standing half-shrouded in the corridor shadow. "Hold," Rikudo said, lifting a hand. "She's here for me."
Herales blinked.
"You can't be serious."
"Who is she?" "A comrade.
One I trust with my life." She stared at him, then at the figure, reluctant. How did she even get in? "I'll explain one day." Still wary, Herales relented. She ushered the guards out with a whisper, "Be careful." The figure stepped forward, lowering her hood.
Golden eyes.
Ethereal beauty. Power radiated from her effortlessly. "Rukana," Rikuto said with quiet reverence. The goddess of judgment gave a soft smile.
"Sir Rikuto.
I see you've been very busy." He gestured to the documents.
"Trying to be. Bromlund stabilized.
Trade's growing. The treasury's finally not leaking blood. I'd say it's progress."
You've done well.
But I'm here about someone else. How's Daniel?"
Rikuto blinked. "Daniel?"
"We're on good terms, I think." He saved Princess Eremia's life, using Earth techniques, actually. CPR and what he called defibrillation.
Caused a scandal, of course. Rukana nodded along.
And before all that, did you notice anything about him?
He tilted his head.
You mean the no magic thing? That surprised all of us. I assumed he was just different. She tapped her fingers together.
I need to talk to him.
Can you summon him here?
Rikuto winced. That may be difficult, Lady Goddess.
He's at Fort Peony, far to the north, on the border of the Demon Wildlands.
Rukana froze.
He's not here.
No, my lady.
She paled slightly. Rikuto offered gently, if it's urgent, you could appear before him directly.
She nodded slowly.
Yes, I could.
I should.
Her expression shifted, composed again, like flipping a switch.
Well then.
You're doing wonderfully, Rikuto.
Truly. Until next time.
And with a graceful gesture, she vanished in a radiant flash of light. Rikuto stared at the empty space, trying to process the divine visit.
Castle Northwall.
Commander. Trya shouted, breaking free of her binds and lunging at Commander Laywells. How could you abandon him? The most practical decision was made, Laywells said coldly. Practical? You left him to die.
Subdue her. No.
I'm taking a buckrock. I'm going back. He stayed behind with purpose, Lieutenant. You will not jeopardize the defense of this garrison.
You wanted him gone, Trya accused. All your scheming.
You wanted him dead, didn't you? Laywells held out a small crystal, Trya's memory shard. Daniel retrieved this. Even when you were distracted. Even now, he thinks of others.
Trya faltered. He's a divine summon.
His very presence may shift the tides of this world.
I trust he'll survive. He wanted to earn his pardon. Let him.
Just then, a shout echoed from the gate. Open the gate. 2 buckrocks galloped in, Recon Squad Sunray. Commander. The scout saluted. Vanguard reached Fort Peony. Forces confirmed, Red Dragon B-Class Drake, 500 goblins, 120 lesser demons, 50 beastmen, 8 mason roms, and a Chirinese mage. And Daniel. He stayed behind, Commander. Said he was earning his pardon. Trya's glare hardened, but she said nothing. Then we pray, Laywells said quietly, that he earns it. Fort Peony outskirts. Campfire, nightfall. Daniel handed a plate of food to Karatai, the Chirinese warrior who had led the enemy troops. She bowed deeply.
Thank you, master.
For the 100th time. I'm not your master. But you spared me. That makes you my conqueror. It is our way.
Daniel sighed.
Your village, how far is it?
5 days.
I'll guide you.
No, I'll go alone.
I'll store you in one of the bags for the trip.
She paled. Please, not that.
I would rather die than be sealed away like livestock. Daniel considered, then relented.
Fine.
But I am taking a risk.
She bowed lower.
Your mercy humbles me. I will not betray you. He untied her wrists. She stretched her legs, leaning gently on his shoulder. Why are you so kind, Daniel? Because someone has to be. She smiled, eyes softening. Then I will follow you. To the ends of this world. Castle Northwall, days later. The scouts returned from Fort Peony with troubling news. There was a battle, the squad leader reported.
But no bodies.
Just melted stone, blood, and signs of heavy fighting.
No enemies. No Daniel.
Did they retreat?
Gwenesphia asked. Lieutenant Freya frowned.
Or did he kill them all? Signs suggest bodies were taken, the scout added. Magic bags, perhaps. Daniel's footprints were everywhere, and led west. Laywells stood still for a long moment. Then she said, almost to herself. He defended the garden alone. Did you doubt him? Gwen asked quietly. Laywells shook her head. Never.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
It's been 5 days since Daniel started heading deeper into the Demon Wildlands, and he's organizing the many storage bags he collected, consolidating like items into individual bags and marking the bags with symbols that he can identify from the interface. Karatai is still asleep, and she sleeps rather defenselessly, as if she's not afraid of anything or truly comfortable around Daniel. He's given up trying to push her away at night. She likes to cuddle, apparently, and he's awakened several times to find her clinging to him under his blanket, which made him too hot. Her skin is cooler than his, so he wonders if she likes his body heat. He suspects he wasn't hot because of her body heat, since by definition, being cooler than him would make him feel cooler.
But he puts it out of his mind.
He needs to stay as detached as possible. Daniel sorts all of the small wooden containers that have potions inside, and symbols he can't read. He'll ask Karatai which ones are which, and from there, they'll revive the captives he still has in storage. He didn't want to withdraw them until he could heal them anyways, and now that he's actually organizing, it'll be easier to take care of. Likewise, he has rations and water skins, and he prepares individual small bags to give to the captives when they send them on their way. He'll wait until they get close to Karatai's village so that the villagers can hopefully help them find their way. From what the young woman said, the Chirinis have no interest in the weak, and they will likely cooperate with sending them towards their own peoples. Goblins are generally semi-nomadic, so as long as he sends a few of them off together, they should be able to function until they meet up with more goblins. The succubus came from the city, where the demon queen's direct subordinates are gathered. And the beast people are solitary hunters, often summoned by issuing written requests and posting them throughout the forest, and whoever shows up to accept the challenge become the forces provided by the beast people. Daniel knows the demi-humans, like the Gadanines, have excellent natural senses, but supposedly, the beast people of the demon wildlands are even more in tune with their senses and the various signs of nature. Karatai yawns and stretches, briefly expressing disappointment that she's alone. She climbs out of the shell they're using as shelter, and she mumbles, "Master. Why didn't you wake me? I didn't need anything, and we're safe for the moment. Did you sleep well?" She smiles and nods, yawning partway through. "What are you doing, Master?" "Organizing my storage system. Actually, now that you're up, I wanted to ask you about the potions."
Potions.
Daniel pulls out the 5 different potions he identified, and he sets them on the ground in front of her. "Can you tell me what these are and what they do?"
Potations. Not potions.
Potions are Eastern alchemist brews. These are just spirits imbued with magic effects.
All right.
What can they do? Karatai points at the one with a leaf-like squiggle for a symbol. This one is a healing potation. As long as the person drinking it isn't dead, it can recover their wounds in a matter of minutes. It can't replace lost blood, but it does tend to keep users from dying on its own more often than not. She then points to one with a red X-like symbol, though it could also be a lazily drawn trident. This one is harder to make, so it's not always used, but it restores blood. For grievous wounds of high-value allies, such as commanders or dragons, this one can cause the body to produce half of its normal blood volume in about 10 minutes. So, it would be used in conjunction with the healing potation. She glances around, whispering, "I've also heard some will use it before battles, because it gives them much greater endurance when fighting. It's super forbidden though." "Why's that?" "Sounds like a boon. For one, how rare they are to begin with. I assume this and only one other are present in all of the bags you collected. But also, if a healthy person uses one, it can cause them to suddenly die for no apparent reason." Daniel nods as he absorbs the information.
"Yeah, that's what I thought.
Must be triggering blood doping, in a sense. Thickens the blood, causes blood clots or hypertension." She watches him, and he smiles. "People of my world would pull their own blood out and store it before competitions, and then inject it back in right before for those same effects. Since the potation, makes the body produce blood, it sounds like the same thing is happening, just from inside." Too much blood is what does that. That's my belief in this case. Our bodies, since we all seem to have blood, use blood to transport what we breathe into our muscles, organs and brains so that we can function. If you have more blood, you can carry more oxygen, right? I guess that makes sense. How do you know that?
He chuckles.
We don't have magic, so we have to know how the world works at its fundamental levels. Most of those same principles seem to carry over here, thankfully. Even though you can't use magic, you're one of the wisest people I've ever seen.
No, not quite.
I don't want to get into a tangle with the Demon Queen, since I suspect she's far wiser than I. Or the Dragon Lord. I'm quite normal for a person from my world. But, let's get back to the potations.
She pouts but agrees.
This one here is a near-universal antidote. It can stop almost all poisons and toxins from affecting the body, and it speeds up removing them. It's the only one that can't get a person drunk. She chuckles at her joke. The third potion she's pointing to is marked with a purple swirl. It also makes a person, have to relieve themselves more quickly than the others. Daniel confirms with a nod. It can't get a person drunk because it cures the alcohol effects immediately, and it induces urination quickly to help flush the toxins. She points to the next one, which is marked with a yellow set of 3 parallel lines. This one is a mana restorative. It's probably more accurate to call it a mana pool, as it's easier to take before casting, and it prevents exhaustion when using enduring spells. They're not as rare as blood restoratives, but their proof is difficult to attain, from what I've heard, so it's not common. Also, a user can generally only drink one. They're poisonous to goblins.
Makes sense, remarks Daniel.
They have smaller bodies, so a harder alcohol would hit them more heavily. What would happen if you drank a mana restore with an antidote? Karatai thinks for a moment. I don't know of anyone who would try. They're too valuable to waste on goblins or imps, and most everyone else is fine. I only get unstable on my feet after one. Though, I've fainted from 2. It's all making enough sense to Daniel so far. He ponders aloud, and I assume you can only ingest as many as will fit in your stomach, huh? Impressed with the line of thinking, the Kirin woman nods. That's correct. What about the last potation? She fidgets, glancing at it. It has an emblem that resembles a dragon's head. She replies softly, it's a revival potation.
Revival?
As in, different from the healing potation.
She confirms, yes.
It was meant for his grace, the red dragon, in the off chance he were to fall in battle. Merely getting the potation into his mouth should his heart cease would revive him at full strength. It could even work on him now. What if he has grievous wounds? Healing potations could restore those wounds. The revival potion will ignore that for a time. Even a head alone can be revived, supposedly. I believe his grace's concubine was carrying it.
I see. Who was his concubine?
A tiger woman wearing dragon scale pauldrons. That's all I remember about her. Daniel ponders for a moment. He rescued 2 tiger women, but he doesn't recall if either of them were wearing pauldrons. One of them barely had any of her clothes remaining after the blast that incapacitated her. It's probably not a great idea to free them without being prepared to defend himself. In melee combat, most people on this side of the mountains are probably as strong or stronger than him by a wide margin. Daniel nods his head as he considers the information. So, I'll store the blood restorative, revival, and mana potations for now. Probably won't need the mana potation either. Daniel puts the other 4 back into his potion bag, and he stores the unneeded bags in his consolidation bag. He'll finish organizing later. Now then, I want to talk to the soldiers I captured, though only one was awake when I stored her. Will you translate for me? Karatai agrees brightly, of course, master. She fidgets nervously though. It's clear the notion of being stored makes her uncomfortable. Daniel extracts the goblin woman who was already awake. And as he hoped and expected, she emerges still screaming, Gya. She sees Daniel again, and she squirms on the ground and screams. And, making things worse, Karatai grips his shirt, startling him.
Master. What?
How could you? What are you talking about? The Chirinis pouts as the goblin squirms away from them in futility. You had your way with her, didn't you?
Daniel sighs.
He knocks his knuckle against her forehead, and she whines.
What?
You haven't even. I didn't do anything to her. She panicked when I started putting her in the storage bag. Translate, please. She pouts but murmurs, if you say so, master. She looks at the goblin, who acknowledges who she is. Daniel will have to be patient, since Karatai already said goblins are difficult to communicate with. This human is our master now. His name is Daniel, but be sure to revere him as master. He wants to apologize for scaring you, but he needed to get you away from the base. The goblin Karatai is talking to is bound on her back, and she glances at Daniel briefly. She replies quickly, and Karatai has to focus on listening to understand what the goblin means. She can understand trading language, but she doesn't speak it herself.
He human?
Why he master? He defeated us in battle. That is how it must be.
That no fair. Shek did best.
Shek listen orders. Shek go home now. I think master intends to take you home in time, but you have to cooperate. He's a good master. You don't have to be afraid. Gee, good master? He didn't hurt you, did he? He. The goblin woman curls into a ball, hiding her naked body as much as possible from the human. Daniel, likewise, is looking away when he realized that she came out of the storage unit nude. What are you two talking about? I was just explaining her situation to her, Master. She's still nervous and doesn't like that you put her in storage, as you could probably guess, my wise master. You don't have to flatter me. Ask her if she has any hostility towards me, please. Karatai nods in confirmation. Master wants to know if you'd be willing to express your gratitude to him for saving your life. Save? He try kill Shek. He was defending the fortress he was charged with defending. He was within his rights to kill us all, and instead he saved us. The goblin woman pouts softly. She asks sheepishly, what Shek have do? Karatai smiles and pets her arm. You can offer him something, and I'll translate for you. Just remember, your very life is his now. The goblin woman pouts again. Shek have to use body? It would be a genuine expression of your gratitude and loyalty, yes? Daniel interrupts. This is turning into a really long question, Karatai. She's not against the idea. We're just discussing how she can express her gratitude. That isn't necessary. Don't put words in my mouth. Daniel finds her clothes and extracts them, as well as a blanket. He passes them behind himself without looking at her. Tell her I'll untie her if she'll behave. Same as you. Karatai again confirms with a nod. Master is going to untie you.
You'll have your chance.
Don't waste it, or I'll kill you. And don't try to hurt him. The goblin woman nods reluctantly, and Karatai says, she agrees.
She'll behave.
Daniel is suspicious, but he continues as normal for now. Please help her sit up. I'll start with her hands. Karatai follows his instructions, and he unties the knot binding her hands behind her back. He then hands her the unfolded blanket so she can cover herself, and she holds the blanket over her chest and body as he unties her ankles. Karatai reminds Shek, remember, he's the most powerful sorcerer in the world. He's a Feldrock sorcerer. Don't try anything.
Shek won't.
Daniel asks skeptically, did you just tell her I'm a Feldrock sorcerer? Karatai blushes.
It's the truth, isn't it?
No. Since I'm not a sorcerer. Well, she doesn't need to know that. Daniel sits back once the goblin is free, and he states softly, you know the truth, Karatai. Why do you insist on being loyal?
She smiles.
Isn't that obvious, Master? True strength does not know physical descriptors or titles. The goblin woman fidgets with the blanket, glancing at Karatai briefly. She lowers the blanket, squeaking at Daniel. Shek ready. Karatai nods in agreement. She says she's ready. Daniel takes a breath and sighs. Ready for what? To dash. Daniel flicks Karatai's forehead, and she whines, why?
Master.
I'm only ensuring your second faithful dash. Neither of you are my servants. Daniel pulls the blanket back up and grabs the goblin's clothes, handing them to her again. He signals Shek with a nod, and she gingerly takes the clothes. He continues lecturing Karatai, I'm not taking advantage of either of you.
Any of you.
Please translate what I'm saying and not trying to do me any favors. I just want to treat her and let her go. If she needs escort to her village, I'll try to escort her, once we check with the others. The Chirinese verifies in the trade language, Shek, Master wants to be sure you want to bear his children. Shek blushes, and Daniel immediately accuses, you just embarrassed her, didn't you? Please take this seriously. Karatai giggles, especially when Shek squirms briefly. Shek want babies. Master give babies. Daniel glares at Karatai, and she starts to falsely translate, she'd be happy to follow Dash. You're despicable, Karatai. She pouts, I only did my most important duty, Master. To ensure your happiness.
He groans.
I'm perfectly happy as I am. Don't need anything else. If it'll make you happy for some unknown reason, when I complete what I'm trying to accomplish, I'll spend the entire rest of my life indulging your fantasies. Until then, please take this seriously. Why you promise, Master?
Sure.
But, only after I complete my goal. She nods with a happy grin, feeling giddy for a moment. She almost forgets about the goblin woman watching her for a translation. She quickly says, Master says he'll give us as many as we want once he completes his goal. He's very kind, so I'm sure he'll keep his promise.
Shek no mind. Shek want live. And food.
Shek have food please.
Certainly.
But, you have to answer Master's questions. Are you still gravely injured? Shek inspects herself as she puts her robe back on.
Shek no see blood. No hurt.
Wake up and master. She glares lightly at Daniel for a moment. Daniel asks, what did you tell her?
Nothing.
I asked if she's injured. She says no, and that she remembers waking up before you, put her in storage.
Did it hurt her?
Master wants to know if being in storage hurt you. What it was like.
It dash. Shek hesitates for a moment. No. No hurt. Scary.
Shek scream no, but master no listen. Still screaming no when suddenly here.
She says no.
It scared her, but she didn't even feel the time pass. She just was suddenly here.
I see. Good to know.
Also, that it strips their clothes off, for some reason. Might be a reason it's not widely used. Karatai nods in agreement. She also asked for food. But of course we can simply give her.
We'll feed her.
She can share in dinner. Let me extract the others though. I'll need to let time pass for them to wake up, after all. Master, if you awaken them all at once, I can't guarantee none of them will attack.
Understood. Then, we'll start with the goblins at least.
What kind of threat does the succubus pose?
Succubus.
Daniel shows her using the interface, and she coos, oohoo. She's actually our cook.
What?
You're messing with me.
No.
She cooked what few meals we had the privilege of having. Her only offensive abilities are hypnosis spells and...
Wait. Why do you want her? Daniel sighs.
I'm releasing all of them, remember? She looks the next least imposing. The tiger women look like a handful if they put up a fight, so we'll do them last. Karatai gives an affirmative nod, but she continues to pout a little. You just like her because she looks more like a human. Then, why were you first and a goblin second? Karatai flinches and blushes. She fidgets a little, and Daniel extracts the other 3 goblin women that are still unconscious. Shek, who is dressed in her robe again, remarks brightly, Sklo.
Is Sklo.
She gravitates towards one of the other goblin women, and Karatai translates, apparently, she knows that one.
Sklo.
Daniel nods, having come to the same conclusion. I did my best to stabilize them. Do any of them need potations as far as you can tell? Karatai studies the goblin women for a moment.
They appear safe.
But, I can use healing magic on them if you'd prefer. You can use healing magic? Karatai grins and nods.
I can.
Light magic, remember? Though, the spells I know aren't very strong. As long as it can close their minor wounds. The bandages have disappeared, along with their clothes, and Karatai confirms confidently. She begins healing the goblins one by one. Also, is there any chance you know language comprehension? Language.
Oh.
You mean so you can understand us?
It won't work on me.
But if you don't mind using it on them to understand this language, that would make things easier.
Ah.
I don't mind, but are you sure that's a good idea?
Why not?
If anyone can conquer the world by learning a language, you'd be halfway there, wouldn't you?
She blushes, nodding.
I can't use it myself, but Aaloan can probably use it.
Aaloan? The succubus.
Yes, confirms the demon woman. But, you absolutely can't agree to sleep with her.
Don't worry. I won't. I mean it.
Karatai tries to grab him, and they end up wrestling as he tries to insist she's worried over nothing. The Chironese manages to pin Daniel to the ground, though he was mainly trying not to hurt her, and judging by their relatively matched strength, she's not trying to hurt him either. She's just trying to be assertive and insistent that he doesn't sleep with a succubus. What she fails to understand is that he already knows. Maybe it won't be the same as the fictional succubi in his world. Maybe she's not a nightmare demon that drains the men she becomes intimate with. Daniel's not trying to form attachments. That part is more than enough. Daniel smirks and jokes, looks like I've been defeated.
I won't sleep with her. I promise.
Karatai sighs and smiles.
Very well.
As long as you understand. She allows him to sit up, and Daniel extracts the demon from storage. Together, the 3 watch over the unconscious prisoners, and only Aaloan and 2 of the unnamed goblins need healing magic from Karatai, which does the same basic steps as the potation, inducing an accelerated healing response from the body, but without the potation. The difference is that it only works while Karatai is actively healing them, and it consumes her own mana energy, which can exhaust her if she uses too much magic. Fortunately, their injuries are minor, and she has plenty left over to heal Shek as well. It takes a few hours for the goblins to wake up. They aren't particularly brave creatures, but they do seem pretty hardy, since they were the fastest to bounce back from fairly serious injuries. Shek and Karatai explain the situation to them, and they agree to remain docile. And finally, Aeloan wakes up. Unlike the goblins who panicked the moment they awakened, she makes eye contact with Karatai first, and then Daniel, and she smiles.
A human?
So, we were rescued, were we? Karatai nods warmly.
Yes.
The red dragon was defeated.
Ah, indeed. Wait. What?
Aeloan glances at Karatai with wide eyes, and then at Daniel, who seems to be a simple human man with a strangely shaped staff slung across his back. He's so strange, she can't detect even a trace of magic coming from him. How was Lord Dragon defeated? Karatai smiles and gestures at Daniel. Aeloan wriggles to sit up, demonstrating a skillful amount of dexterity. She tucks her knees under so she can sit on her calves, and she bows, "Human, thank you for sparing me. I understand if you don't believe me, but my village is hostage to the dragons, so I had no choice." Daniel glances at Karatai, and she nods subtly. The dragons don't ask for cooperation. You cooperate, or everything you love ceases to exist. Aeloan nods in agreement. Daniel offers gently, "I defended myself and the fortress I was tasked with defending. But, I am sorry if you lost anyone in the battle." Aeloan acknowledges him softly.
Thank you. You are kind.
"I am sorry if we killed any of your allies in the battle." Karatai grins. "Daniel was the only living soul in the base during our battle."
What?
With a nod to confirm, Daniel adds, "Any bodies you saw were training dummies. I was serving as a testing platform for my spells."
Aeloan cocks her head.
"You're lying."
Nope.
"I was the only one .
Not that.
You're lying. You didn't use magic." "What makes you say that?" "I can read intentions with my own magic. I'm not strong enough to read minds, but intentions are easy for me. And, you just lied about casting spells." She looks into his eyes with a sincerity. "You defeated a dragon, without magic?" Karatai excitedly grins. "Can you believe it?"
Aeloan, right?
"My name is Daniel."
Please call me that.
Aeloan bows again. "I am indeed Aeloan. A pleasure to meet you, Lord Daniel. I accept my role as Warbride and hope I can please you." "Not you too." Karatai giggles sheepishly, "Heh heh heh." Daniel adds, "No one here is a Warbride. No one here owes me their lives. I'm not even considering myself affiliated with the East anymore. I did my job defending the fortress. As far as they know, hopefully, I'm dead. But they banished me there for doing what I thought was right to save a life. I get why, but it still sucked.
So, here we are.
I saved who I could and who survived. I can't speak for those who fled the battle. But please don't revere me so highly. I just want to be Daniel." Karatai and Aeloan glance at each other, and they smile.
Daniel sighs.
"Aeloan, Karatai believes you should be able to cast language comprehension. Is that correct?"
Indeed.
"You wish to understand trade? Or perhaps Spilarian?"
No.
"It won't work on me. If you don't mind, though, could you cast it on the goblins so they can speak in Imperial Common?"
Easterner.
Aeloan glances at the goblins, acknowledging their existence for the first time. "On goblins, my lord?" Daniel sighs in disgust. "You and Karatai."
Yes, please.
Karatai explains, "They are our sisters now, Aeloan. Master doesn't wish to treat any of us poorly."
I see. Very well.
"I shall extend them due respect, I suppose."
Aeloan smiles.
"It will be my pleasure, my lord. Please excuse me for a moment while I cast the spell on them." Daniel agrees politely, "Thank you, Aeloan." Aeloan casts the language spell on the goblins after explaining it to them, and Shek cautiously asks, "Master understand Shek?"
I do, confirms the mechanic.
"But, you don't have to call me Master. I'm just Daniel. Nice to be able to talk to you." She smiles, giggling happily. She asks, "Master no hurt Shek or others?"
No.
"Not unless you try to hurt me. Once we figure out where we are, you're free to go and head back to your homes. Or wherever else you want to go." The goblins glance at each other, and then share a glance with Aeloan. Aeloan asks, "You are freeing us?" Daniel nods civilly to confirm. "I'm not an actual soldier or anything. Just Daniel. I bound you so you wouldn't attack me when you woke back up. Since we're getting along, you may leave at any time if you so wish.
And
You won't attack. Daniel shakes his head. So long as you don't attack me. Aeloan asks, what is your goal, Lord Daniel?
my goal.
What are you trying to achieve, if not to serve your kingdom?
Ah, fair question.
Well, I know their motivations for the war. They believe everyone's serving the same apparent goal as the Demon Queen wants to conquer the East. But, something doesn't seem right to me. Aeloan remarks, Karatai may have already told you, but we're not that strongly organized. The Demon Queen doesn't want to destroy the East, but I don't know why she started the war in the first place, to be honest. Karatai nods in agreement. We've had a lot of people coming from the far west, but no one really seems to know why. The Demon Queen ordered it, and we obeyed. She has never been wrong before.
Daniel sighs.
Then, my first goal is to figure out why she ordered that.
Karatai gasps. You can't just approach the Queen, Master.
Especially as a human.
He's not a complete fool, but he does confirm, I agree.
But I can see if I can find anyone who knows. He strokes his chin, planning his continued path forward. Maybe the Queen does hate the East. Maybe the population is growing out of control. Maybe the East provoked the war. Won't know until I dig a little deeper. Why would you want to know? Asks Aeloan softly. I might have mindlessly served the kingdom if nothing had changed from where I was before I got banished to the front lines. But now I have questions. And my loyalty got me nowhere. Karatai says warmly, with your strength, Master, you could settle down in a nice village, have a family with your beloved, and forget all your other worries. Aeloan narrows her eyes at Karatai, and the Chirinese shoots her a glare. However, the demon speaks tenderly, she is right, my lord. The mere fact that you were able to defeat a drake, let alone a dragon, would be enough to earn you respect. Though you'll likely earn the ire of the Dragon Lord once he learns of you.
Ah, excellent point.
But I'll cross that bridge when I have to. For now, we should be within a few hours of Karatai's village. I'll figure out where I'm headed after that. The women nod together. As they get closer to the village, Daniel asks about the tiger women. Aeloan reveals that they should be peaceful enough with the dragon gone, but they're a proud and independent people, so they're more likely to simply leave. Daniel states that's fine, and he extracts them as well, waiting for them to wake up as the group makes camp for the night. Both Aeloan and Karatai confirm that neither of them is the dragon's concubine, though Daniel did collect all of the bodies, so unless she was one of the ones to flee, she's likely the one he got the revival potation from. Though, he admittedly didn't pay attention to which person that was. The two women wake up, and Aeloan and Karatai are the two to explain to them. Daniel provides them with prepared bags with some supplies and daggers once the other two confirm they won't attack. They keep their distance from Daniel, but Karatai reassures him quietly that they are very good at detecting lies, similar to Aeloan. Of course, with the large handful of relative enemies Daniel has surrounding him, there's no way anything can be as simple as camping out and continuing forward. Lord Daniel.
Daniel sighed. It's not Aeloan.
It's Pete, the elder of the two young tigress women. While possessing more features of a tiger than the Gatanines do with cats, they aren't much different in the grand scheme of things. One has attractive blue coloring with black stripes, while the other has silvery gray hair and fur where present, with dark gray stripes. Both of their eyes are vibrant jade green, with cat-like vertical pupils. Although, their expressions are relatively gentle at the moment. I told you, Aeloan and Karatai are messing with me. Please just call me Daniel. Pete glanced at Wea, her companion, and they both fidget. With a sigh, Daniel asked, what is it? Commander Karatai mentioned that you collected all of the bodies felled in the battle. Daniel hesitates for a moment as he continues sorting small items in a couple bags. He replied cautiously, I did. He keeps his hand close to his hip, where his revolver is located. He still hasn't fired it, but its hammer cycles properly, so it shouldn't have issues. Did she still have her revival potion? Again, Daniel hesitates to answer. He feels like they're being sincere, and they aren't trying to probe him as an enemy, but as an ally.
Yes. I have it. Although, I don't know which body is hers.
I won't revive the dragon.
Pete shook her head.
She sinks to the ground and bows her head to the ground itself. Wea followed suit, and Pete pleads softly, please revive our Mikadressel. We shall serve you in payment, and pay any price.
Mikadressel. Yes. In simple terms, she is our princess.
Datacorians answers to the demon queen when she calls, but we are protected by the Mikadressel.
She is our voice.
It was beyond her control that she became concubine to the Dragon Lord's younger brother. Daniel ponders the information with a nod. While it's definitely a tale incomplete, he believes the sincerity of the presentation of the story. From the context, he figures the Mikadressel is close to a princess or duchess, and the Datacorians, the tiger folk, regard her as a high-ranking official in that regard.
Tell me about her.
What is her role? Pete explains. She answers to the queen, and she chooses her warriors when battles are decided. It was my and Weia's great honor to serve alongside her, as well as our comrades. But without her, the queen can order us as slaves, should she be so inclined. I meant more of her personality.
Is she a cruel person?
Will she get along with a human?
Pete confirms confidently.
She is open-minded and slow to judgment or anger. That you have treated the rest of us well will reflect highly on her. Her voice would be strong in aiding in your endeavors. I don't need connections right now, but I believe you. Would you give your life for her? Both Datacorians nod. Their feline ears flick nervously, but not in attempted deceit. She is kind and wise. Much like Lord Daniel.
Ah. Flattery. Nice.
Daniel's sarcasm is just for the sake of sarcasm. He has no objections about reviving a princess, since he has no one else to revive at the moment. Assuming she has the influence these two claim, it could prove to be useful down the road. But more importantly, if he uses, even if it's considered a waste, the revival potation on this Mikadressel, then she can't beg for the dragon to be revived in turn. He has only the one, after all. Daniel agrees to revive her, all right?
I'll revive her.
But, you have to make sure she doesn't try to kill me.
Agreed.
The two tiger-like women nod in agreement.
Of course, my lord.
If I have to kill her again, I'm not helping you.
They nod.
We will defend you if she is hostile. But I assure you, she will hear reason. Daniel agrees to revive the Mikadressel. He invites them to pick out which of the bodies is hers. They can recognize her apparently rare golden color with red stripes, which is certainly not like any other tiger of Earth, but because all of the beast folk were exotic looking with colors that wouldn't be natural on Earth for the terrestrial creatures they resemble, he paid it no mind. And Daniel recognizes the fancy shoulder pauldron she's wearing, as well as a fairly elegant outfit compared to the others. It's tattered compared to what it's supposed to look like, and because of the blood and injuries, she didn't stand out against the other corpses. However, once she's extracted, both tiger women confirm she is definitely the Mikadressel. Daniel then finds his potation bag and extracts the revival potation, identifying it via the dragon emblem on it, the most distinctive symbol of the 5 symbols present. Aeloan asks softly, "My lord?"
Are you certain?
Daniel confirms with a chuckle, "Sure. Who else should I use it on presently? If I need more, maybe I should collect some more. So long as they're in storage, I have all the time in the world, right?" She nods her head in astonished acquiescence. "I suppose." Pete adds to emphasize, "The Mikadressel has a strong voice in the court of the Covenant. She will be a strong ally for you, my lord."
I'm sure.
Daniel's reply is a little dismissive, though he's confident enough it's true. He feeds the revival potation to the Datacorian woman. He's skeptical that a deceased person will revive, but there is magic in this world, so he approaches his own skepticism with a cautious optimism. And sure enough, the woman's body squirms and she coughs, taking a breath. Daniel then feeds her a healing potation and a blood restorative, ensuring her recovery is assured, since she definitely lost a lot of blood, given the wound she has. The two tiger women relax and bow.
Thank you, Lord Daniel.
I'm not nobility or a master. Please just call me Daniel.
We cannot.
That you showed such reverence for our most exalted, you are surely worthy of great prestige.
Daniel sighs.
Where I come from, it's just decent behavior to try to help others. The two stare at him, and he instructs, trying to deflect, "Take care of her. I'm going to continue sorting my inventory." They nod, and they carefully move her to one of the shelter shells, tucking her in and nursing her as they monitor her well-being. She's certainly stable, and the healing potation restore her injuries, so it's mostly a matter of time waiting for her to awaken. And the sun is setting, so it'll soon be time to sleep. Daniel approaches Pete early in the evening.
Pete.
"Why yes, my lord?" She fidgets, facing him with a rather docile presence. Daniel asks, "You're pretty strong, right?" "Yes, I believe so, my lord." "And, do you want to sleep with me?" "My lord, I will do as you ask." That's not what I'm asking. I want to know if you yourself desire to be intimate with me. She hesitates, and he quickly adds before she agrees again under some misguided sense of obligation. I'm hoping the answer is no. I'd like someone to keep Aeloan and Karatai away while I sleep. You can sleep as well, but I need someone trustworthy in my proximity. Pete points at herself, asking, And you choose me, my lord. Daniel nods with a sigh. I know I can't rely on Aeloan and Karatai to control themselves, and the goblins are subordinate to all of us and content with that subordination. That leaves just you or Wea. You seem most mature. Pete blushes and bows. Why, you flatter me, my lord. If it's what you wish, I shall protect you.
Don't be alert all night.
Just be close to deter the other two.
That's all I want. She nods confidently.
I think I understand, my lord. I shall not leave your side.
Thank you, replies Daniel.
I just want a peaceful night's sleep if I can attain it. She states a little more gung-ho than he was planning on. I shall ensure it, my lord.
Thank you.
In any case, that's one small problem solved. They establish a watch rotation for watching over the Mikadressel, whose name or friendly name, like the others, is Bika. Bika is resting peacefully with no signs of complication from the various potations Daniel used on her. She might wake up with a hangover, thanks to their alcoholic nature, but she'll likely wake up, which is better than she was a few moments ago. Daniel finishes his evening tasks and lays down to sleep, sleeping once more on his storage bags as a pillow. True to her word, Pete keeps close to Daniel, sleeping in his shelter, but not cuddled against him the way Karatai did the last few nights. She is quiet and peaceful, and if anything, Daniel kind of likes having her around. The next morning, Bika wakes up as they're preparing breakfast. Where am I? Pete explains, catching her up on the battle and their proximity to Karatai's village. A Feldrock sorcerer? Asks the Mikadressel after it's explained to her. Daniel retorts dryly, I object, but no one's been listening to me. But you defeated our dragon leader, did you not? Daniel cautiously confirms.
I did.
And you chose to revive me?
He nods civilly. Yes.
At the request of your allies. He gestures at Pete and Wea, and Bika smiles at them.
Thank you all.
My duty was supposed to be to Lord Red, but I am thankful to have been spared. She bows to Daniel the same way the others did to plead for Bika's life. Daniel replies gently, That's not necessary.
Just treat me well, please.
We'll be out of each other's hair soon enough. However, Bika remains in the bowing position. Please, Lord Daniel, Feldrock sorcerer of the Eastern Realm, please save my people. Daniel stares at her for a moment. For the moment, the others are busy bathing themselves. Daniel asks, What are you talking about? Our people are suffering from a plague. The dragons promised a solution, but without Lord Red to keep his promise. I fear our people will slowly wither and die.
Daniel winces. A plague.
He's far from a doctor, and if she's relying on him actually being a sorcerer, she's going to be severely disappointed. She nods wearily.
Yes.
It is afflicting more and more of our people every day.
Daniel hesitates.
He can't feign ignorance on solving a disease. But then, there are many things that he may be able to mitigate, given the advantages of antidote potations and his knowledge of modern technology. Reluctant, but wanting to help if he can, Daniel asks, What is the nature of this plague? It is a plague the dragons have cured before with ancient medicine. It starts with our people losing strength and becoming weary. And more obvious signs are losing teeth and blood, as well as wounds reopening even without new injury or strain. Eventually, curse shakes and death are close behind. Daniel listens patiently, and he tries to absorb the information. Whatever it is sounds like a rather elaborate disease, shutting down the victim's body slowly and painstakingly. If it's something similar to ALS Lou Gehrig's disease there's almost nothing he can do to even slow the disease's progression. But then, something sounds off about some of the symptoms she described. Curious, he asks, Tell me, Bika, does the skin of those suffering this plague turn a yellowish color? She confirms nervously. Why, yes. Not long before death, and during the ensuing madness that overtakes some. And do they bruise from even light strikes that would normally never bruise? With wide eyes, she nods in surprise. Why, yes. You know of this plague.
Daniel sighs. I hope so.
Tell me, do you recognize this flavor? Daniel withdraws a couple of different things from storage, some fruits that have a very citrus flavor, something very similar to raspberries, and something similar to broccoli which disgusts him, but contains vital nutrients if anything else is unavailable. Do your people regularly eat any of these?
Bika is repulsed at first. No.
We're carnivores by nature. Foods like these induce homosexuality and weak constitutions. Daniel stares at her for a moment.
Wow.
You actually believe that? She stares at him in turn. What do you mean?
Daniel sighs.
Can you tell me how your people came to those two conclusions?
I'm
not sure. I figured as much. Daniel returns the fruits and vegetables to his bag. I am fairly confident from what you've described that your people are suffering from scurvy. It's actually a relatively simple affliction, but mysterious if you don't know the cause. I don't know that I understand, my lord. In somewhat complex terms, it's a deficiency in vitamin C, a vitamin found in many fruits and vegetables. Much as I hate the greens myself, fruits are a good source. Daniel adds as he gestures gently with his hands, with the symptoms you described, it sounds like scurvy. I bet, when the dragons provided their cure, your people recover pretty quickly. Bika can only nod as she stares at him, hypnotized by his revelation. And I'd be willing to bet the cure tastes extremely tangy or sour.
Again she is blown away.
Why you can cure it?
Daniel sighs.
There's not really anything to cure. You just need to start intentionally increasing your vitamin C intake.
Fruits, berries, vegetables. There are a lot.
I don't know all of them, but you can usually tell if it has a slightly acidic flavor, like these berries. Daniel gives Bika a couple of the raspberry-like berries, and she nibbles on one. She looks at him, asking, "This is the cure?" Like I said, it's not a cure, Peresi. You need your people to start incorporating things like this into their diet.
Farming them is a bonus.
You can sometimes squeak by eating prey that contains vitamin C because they eat things high in vitamin C. However, if your prey doesn't ingest enough, which can be affected by the region you're in, you don't get enough, and you eventually develop scurvy. Supplement your diet with fruits, especially, but vegetables as well, and you should see an improvement quickly. Bika crawls on her knees, taking Daniel's hand. Please cure my people, Daniel. I just told you. You must present this wisdom to my people.
Why me?
You're a leader, aren't you? Why?
Yes.
But there are those who will object. We have been promised a cure by the dragons, so long as I abide by their demands. To suggest something else, it would be adjacent to blasphemy. Daniel sighs as he looks down. He murmurs softly, "Of course it is." He looks at her, asking, "What am I supposed to do?" She replies nervously, "Convince our people of the true nature of this plague." She shrinks her posture a little, adding at a near whisper, "And should they still refuse to listen?" She glances at Daniel's staff, slung across his back. "You utilize your Feldrock magic." Daniel cocks his head. He replies cautiously, "You understand.
My methods kill people, right?
I can't just demonstrate parlor tricks. If you ask me to intervene, someone will die." Bika hesitates, but she stays steadfast.
I understand.
If it means ending our reliance on the dragons, then so be it. One last concern I have, will this not cause trouble between Datacorians and the dragons? If they're manipulating you through such a basic ailment, will they not be angered to lose you as subordinates? She hardens her expression, but it's not in anger at Daniel. I once believed, like many others, that the dragons were a noble, proud, and elegant race. But as concubine, I saw behind the illusion. They are cruel to their own if they express any but the will of the Dragon Lord, which is bloodshed and death of lesser races. When our people first suffered from this scurvy disease, it is said that it was after a series of plagues had destroyed our largest cities, decimated swaths of farmland just before harvest, and poisoned the reserves. She clenches her fists, digging her sharp claws into her palms. She nearly whispers the last part through gritted teeth, "And ever since we've lived off only what we could hunt, the knowledge of what else was safe to eat lost long ago. And every few years." Bika becomes unable to speak as she trembles with rage, and Pete adds softly, "As carnivores larger than we are, our only option was to speak to the dragons. And they shared medicine with us, so long as we provide tribute." Weya adds, "Regardless, we are nothing but servants to them now, and not only expendable, but actively hunted and killed by dragons for sport."
Daniel sighs. I see. I had no idea.
I'll meet with your people, Bika, but I can't promise I can save your people. Not without doing something about this Dragon Lord. I was able to defeat his brother because I was adequately prepared and he wasn't. The Dragon Lord will undoubtedly be prepared for me. She reassures him. If you can only save us from ignorance, if that truly is the cure to this plague, then that is better than nothing. Even if we simply have to keep the wisdom secret, we shall. Most of us don't trust easily, but anything is better than what we suffer now.
I understand.
Then, we'll head out after our first task of the day. Karatai, we'll return you to your village today. Aeloan, you may wish to remain here as well. Both of them ask, Wah dash. Karatai, you're the commander of the militia that took away their Mikadressel. I know it wasn't your choice, but that's the perception people who don't know what I know would have.
Aeloan.
The demoness accuses smugly, you don't have a good excuse for me, Daniel.
Daniel halts his thought.
She's not wrong. She wasn't a high-ranking officer or anything, and she's likely the more dangerous of the two. Magic doesn't directly affect him, but indirect effects, like magically summoned flames burning him, can still affect him. This means that he has no way of knowing for sure if he's immune to hypnosis or other similar effects until he experiences them.
Daniel sighs.
Listen, I didn't want to admit this, but where I come from, it's acceptable. I'm not attracted to women. I'm attracted to men. All of the women present stare at him blankly. He adds uncomfortably, yeah, so? I'd suggest we part ways while we're on good terms. Thank you for your hospitality while we've been together. Karatai's brain finally reboots and she asks, but what about conquering me?
We're even, aren't we?
I defeated you once, you defeated me once. He watches her face for a moment, and he can see the moment it registers, the small wrestling match that she won. Regardless, I told you, I don't collect war brides. Now you know why. Please wish your friends and family well. Daniel bows respectfully.
Take care, Karatai, Aeloan.
Please see Aeloan and the goblins home safely, if you would. Karatai and Aeloan are both stunned, and they glance at each other.
But Daniel needs to move on.
He had already resolved himself not to form attachments, especially after how close he was getting to Wenliana, only for it to need to evaporate. He's used to being a tool. He can mentally adjust when he's just being used. He's not helping Bika overcome a simple ailment, assuming it is scurvy dash, he's going to likely have to kill someone. And that will be a precursor to his real target in the matter, which is another reason he doesn't want to drag along a bunch of companions. Thankfully, Karatai and Aeloan reluctantly give in, though Karatai makes a point of warning, you better come back as soon as your mission is done, Daniel. WH-.
Why?
Aeloan fills in, apparently thinking the same thing when Karatai nods in agreement, you owe it to us to let us try to convert you.
Daniel scoffs.
And if you can't? We'll worry about that later.
She smiles. Come back soon, Daniel. She winks at him. He smirks.
Of any of them, he suspects Aeloan is sharp enough to realize the truth. But she's going along with it, so he's all right with that outcome. With the 3 tigress women, Daniel joins them to head for their own village or settlement. He has a fair amount of rations that would last him, alone, years in the storage bags he has. However, it also contains plenty of fruit and vegetables, which should help get the afflicted back up to fighting strength as quickly as possible. The real problem won't be healing them though. It'll be dealing with the fallout of breaking the illusion that allows those in power to control the rest of the tiger folk. Daniel ensures he has his ammunition handy and that each weapon dry fires like it's supposed to. For the time being, he can't replenish ammo, so he'll have to be conservative. But he has enough if he's careful to last a good long while, more than he should justifiably need simply for defending himself. For now, he'll have to see what he's up against. The one known by lesser races only as the Dragon Lord, is truly a ruling lord in a loosely formed empire. He stands above all, save the only being he seems to hold in some regard similar in level to himself, the Demon Queen. It's unclear the relationship they hold, but regardless, he is left to his own devices because of his own immense power, as well as the power of the other dragons at his side. He is the being she is kneeling before now.
Not because she wants to, of course. She was born wrong.
She is not a dragon, and the dragons never let her forget it. She doesn't know why they hate her so much, but they do. And she has been magically enslaved to the Dragon Lord.
She has no name. She is just slave.
In fact, she's the only slave she knows of in the Dragon Lord's employ, and it's been that way ever since she was born. They look upon her like a monster, a wretch. Instead of horns, she has large triangular ears on top of her head, covered in black fur matching her dark black hair, even though she can assume a humanoid form similar to the other servants of the dragons. Instead of a majestic tail with impenetrable scales, her tail is soft with bushy black fur. She is ugly to the dragons, in either her human or true form. She never asked to be born. But she has been, and for now, she can only obey her orders. Slave, his voice rumbles the room and commands all attention. She looks up, waiting for instruction as always. I tire of looking at your wretched appearance. Prove you are not useless as well. Go to the citadel and retrieve the treasure within.
She flinches.
She replies softly, Master, the citadel treasure. No one has been able to reach it. The feral Feldrock. I did not ask for an opinion. Go. Do not return until you have the treasure. She can't resist a direct order for long. She bows, replying quietly, Yes, master. She departs for the citadel, an ancient fortress of unknown origin. According to stories, which she only knows by overhearing the various servants and allies of the dragons when they gossiped, the citadel is one of the last remnants of a society belonging to the Feldrock race, demonic monsters that once ruled the world. The Feldrocks are monsters that even dragons struggle to defeat, and they're said to be capable of using all magic in the world, even some that has been forgotten since their near extinction. So far as anyone knows, the feral Feldrock is the last one in existence, and though it's alone, Feldrocks can live almost forever. She doesn't stand a chance, of course. The Dragon Lord knows this. He's sending her to die or be stranded. And if by some miracle, she defeats the feral Feldrock, the Dragon Lord can claim the untouched treasure housed in the heart of the citadel. The stories are varied, but one thing is true. The treasure is coveted by almost all living beings that know what it actually is supposed to be, which includes the Dragon Lord himself. As she's leaving, a messenger darts in past her, crying out to the Dragon Lord. Her ears are powerful, even if they are ugly.
She can hear him explain, My lord.
It's your brother. What about him?
He's been slain.
She hesitates, but she can't stop. She has to follow her last orders, and she was ordered to retrieve the treasure of the citadel. However, she can feel the immense pressure of devastatingly dangerous rage surging in the Dragon Lord's horde, where he's probably very close to killing the messenger. She can't disobey her orders, but she can choose how she carries them out. And she decides to pick up the pace and disappear before she becomes collateral when the Dragon Lord's sorrow and anger flare. He sent his brother to break through the lines and conquer the Easterner fortress beyond the mountains. From there, they would begin claiming the territory around it before any of the other Covenant leaders can respond, allowing the dragons to control the resources for a profit. It was a sure victory, as the dragons are virtually invincible against any of the weapons the Eastern Empire and its allies can forge. No blade can pierce or cut their scales, no arrow can pierce their hides, and no mount can defeat them in speed via land, sea, or sky. The only dragons defeated by Easterners in history required thousands of soldiers in exchange and dozens of battles where fortresses were decimated. But, it has only been a little over a week since the Lord's brother departed to launch his attack. Anyone other than the dragon himself would take around a week to return to the Dragon Lord with news. Which means, he was slain the very day he attacked the Easterners. While the Dragon Lord is likely to be furiously enraged, he won't launch the retaliation yet. His power has made him complacent, but he knows that he dare not face an unknown threat if someone was able to kill his brother in a single day. So, he's going to send scouts to find this adversary and learn its weaknesses. The last thing she wants is to be part of that endeavor. Suddenly, trying to conquer the citadel alone isn't such a curse compared with hunting a Dragonslayer. And if a miracle occurs, maybe she'll meet the Dragonslayer without having orders to try to kill him herself. In that situation, maybe even she will. Tears fall from her eyes. She can keep her expression pretty stoic, but she's not devoid of emotions. She never asked for the life she's stuck in. She wants to be free. She wants to explore. She wants to see the world and eat food that has tastes matching the delightful smells coming from the meals served to the Lord and his kin. She wants to have someone to talk to and do all of those things with. She wants to be able to smile. Daniel didn't lead the happiest or most luxurious life on earth. He didn't have much to lose, so he's not in a hurry much to go back. He was summoned by humans to destroy their enemies. And yet, even with all of what he could give, he was exiled, and he ended up helping some of the enemies that tried to destroy the fortress he was exiled to. Daniel is still in no hurry to go back to Earth. There are good people in this world, and they have a certain charm. All of that said, he's thankful he came from Earth with his knowledge of ancient troubles and advancements of technology. Even simple baseline knowledge, like what he's had from years of browsing the internet and going down rabbit holes of knowledge, proves to be incredibly valuable to a variety of cultures that either rely on magic, or are being manipulated by powerful magic beings. In this case, it was obvious the moment he was able to see the first and worst patients. It was definitely scurvy, down to the yellowing of their eyes and skin and losing teeth. He shows the healthy how to make juices out of fruits and vegetables, which are much easier to feed to their people. The trickiest part, though, is convincing them that it's necessary. It's not an instant cure, like the magical potions that the demons and demon allies use. And the dragons have utilized a full social experiment on the Datacorians, convincing them that fruits and vegetables are hazardous to their health, the exact opposite of the truth dash. While not immediately apparent, this forced a reliance on the dragons, who then controlled the cure, allowing them to manipulate the Datacorians. Unfortunately, the territory belonging to the tiger folk is not what Daniel expected. It's a lot less forest, and more of a mountainous valley. There are plenty of animals to hunt, most of which feed on the grasses and small shrubs that grow in the valley. But unless cultivated, no fruit seems to be capable of growing in the valley where the Datacorians live. Fortunately, there is abundant water and means to fertilize soil, so he shows them how to grow the various plants that he has seeds or seeding portions of thanks to the rations he captured from his victory. It only takes 2 days, however, to prove Daniel's wisdom. All of the sickest of the Datacorians have recovered enough strength to eat solid foods and even participate in normal work. While the tiger-like hunters and gatherers aren't ironsmiths by any stretch, they are capable of using simple tools, since they make stone arrowheads from various hard materials. Daniel shows them how to make some simple utensils to make it easier for those who lost their teeth to tenderize and cut their food. Fortunately, the majority of their teeth, and the first ones lost in most cases, are sharp like a typical feline's, which aren't intended as much for chewing. After the first 2 days have passed, Bika pulls Daniel aside alone after the usual checkups result in countless thanks and offers of gifts for Daniel, which he does his best to insist on gifts that are much less valuable, such as meat or drink that can be spared, simple wooden trinkets, or other cultural artwork, things that have more meaning than value. Once alone, Bika begins to form a question. Daniel, I've been wondering. What is it? What you told Lady Karatai and Aeloan. Is it true? Which thing are you asking about? She fidgets a little, looking away. That you're attracted to males. Oh, that, Daniel chuckles. Worked pretty well, didn't it? Or well enough. I don't think Aeloan bought it. She looks at him, not satisfied by his answer and needing more clarification. He rubs his neck, adding softly, it wasn't true. But, listen, I don't have an easy time trusting people. Women, even less so. It comes from he halts, quickly shifting what he says. From my hometown. I had a really bad experience in the past, and, he takes a breath and sighs. I focus on my purpose now. Things that I can accomplish without the need of anyone else's input, if possible. Or, limited to entirely straightforward assistance, I suppose. The last few months haven't changed my mind. I end up friends with a noblewoman in the kingdom of Mornisti, and I get banished for how I saved the second princess's life. I worked diligently at the base where we, met, and I was treated rather poorly. I know why, but it didn't instill a trust in any of the women I was getting close to there either. Karatai believes I'm more powerful than I am, and wants access to that. Aeloan sees a weak-willed target, which isn't far from the truth. I'm glad I could help your people, truly. I'm more glad it was something I knew how to help with. But until I know I can trust someone, I'm not actively looking for an intimacy with anyone. Man or woman. Bika looks down for a moment as she ponders what he just said. She replies softly, you feel like those around you merely use you? Daniel knows it sounds a little insecure, but he nods. I do. It's been that way since I was a child. I'm easily manipulated by women. Those with ability but no willpower are easily used and discarded. I like being helpful, I like using my abilities. I just hate being discarded. So, I instead keep it on my terms and leave as soon as I can. An opportunity arose for me to leave the kingdom that was gearing up to hate me for doing what I thought was right, so I took it. An opportunity to uphold my duty as a person stationed at Fort Peony and leave that environment at the same time arose, so I did what I had to do. An opportunity arose to escape Karatai's advances and Aeloan's dangerous personality, so I took those escapes as well. Soon enough, I'll leave here as well. I know what I'm waiting for. It should be only another few days at most, if my estimation is correct. Bika fidgets with her hands. Is there any way I could get to know you? The you that isn't defined by your abilities? What do you like? What is your favorite food? Daniel smiles softly. I understand that you're being sincere. Truly. But I know I have to go. First and foremost, I have to figure out why I'm here. I have to find my purpose and complete it. Once it's complete, I hope we can meet then, when I'm free to entertain personal freedoms. She cocks her head in confusion. I
I don't understand.
What mission do you have that you are so bound to? I was tasked with destroying the enemies of the kingdom of Mornisti. At a glance, that would be the Demon Queen. But I don't think she's the enemy they thought she was. I want to see what this side of the world looks like, and learn who the real enemy is.
Again, Bika is confused.
You speak like you aren't a subject of your kingdom.
Daniel smirks. You're probably right.
I killed a dragon. I have no interest in power or ruling. But I doubt I need to fear anyone who fears dragons, do I? She scoffs, and then she begins laughing as it sinks in. Daniel's not usually arrogant, at least not intentionally, but every now and then, even he can acknowledge what advantages he carries. Biko admits softly after she calms down, Daniel, I hope you know, not everyone confesses an admiration of you out of desire to manipulate you. With a smile, he replies gently, I know that. But a smile shared between casual friends is much better than a smile that leads to betrayal. She sighs quietly.
You're strange, Daniel. Mysterious.
I think that's part of your charm. But you should be mindful that those that want you now can't wait forever. I encourage you not to. Daniel looks towards the village. Looks like today's the day. She cocks her head, and her ears twitch as she listens. How did you hear that?
I didn't.
The birds and bugs stopped making noise a minute or so ago. And I can see some of the villagers congregating. Daniel withdraws his rifle from his magic bag, and Bika asks, that staff.
Is that?
He confirms confidently, this is the source of my power. Let's go greet our guest. Daniel walks with the rifle like it's a staff, which disarms most people of the world. It flags him as a sorcerer, but it also grants the illusion that close range to him is safe. Casting spells takes time and chanting. Daniel just has to aim and pull a trigger. The villagers kneel before the large presence that is entering the village from the southwest. While not as large as the one Daniel killed already, it is easy to identify the shimmering green being as a dragon. It shares most of the appearance of the red dragon, but this one's wings seem more transparent, like a dragonfly's wings, shimmering as light is refracted through the chitinous material of the wings. Additionally, its scales seem to hang more loosely, like leaves on a tree, rather than hardened armor as the red dragons did. Regardless, Daniel suspects that the chainmail-like scales are just as difficult to penetrate as the red dragon's relative plate armor. Daniel whispers to Bika as she nervously grips his sleeve, do dragons understand the Eastern Common Language? Bika answers as she worriedly watches the path ahead.
Yes.
To my knowledge, all demons, dragons, and the Chirinis do. Though, dragons only because they passively have the effects of language comprehension active.
She tugs his sleeve, you should hide, Daniel.
If he sees you.
Daniel shakes his head. Nope.
I came here to solve a problem. The dragon speaks to the Datakorians, seemingly cordial at first. Daniel can't understand the words, but the tone definitely seems smug, even with the deepness of the tone speaking it. His heart is beating faster. After all, he's facing an apparent apex predator in this world, just as he did at the wall. But as long as he stays in denial about being trapped in a video game, he might be able to survive. He's never been able to lie to himself that well, which is why his hands are getting sweaty. But he summons what little courage he has.
Pardon me.
The dragon's piercing gaze instantly locks on him.
Yes, excuse me.
Are you truly a dragon? The dragon cocks its head in seeming disbelief.
It growls in a deep voice, a human?
What a pathetically weak creature you are. I don't even sense the slightest flicker of magic in you. I get that a lot. I figured out a way to treat the people here, and since you clearly didn't know, I'd like to educate you. Bika whines at a whisper, Daniel. What are you doing? He smirks at her, and then he smiles at the dragon. The ailment the Datakorians were suffering from was just a lack of vitamins. Fortunately, it's easy to treat and prevent, so it shouldn't be an issue again. Daniel watches closely. Everyone he's talked to so far has indicated a few consistent things about the dragons. They're ridiculously powerful, they're confident in their power, and they are completely consumed by hubris. At least, he hopes that last part is true. The dragon's mouth twitches, and Daniel feels a small amount of relief. It's furious, but he gave it an out. All he has to do is admit that he was simply uneducated, and everyone walks away. However, Daniel is a human. One with no magic, no less. To a dragon, the living epitome of magical power, he is no more than a flea would be to him. And unlike a flea, Daniel's bite is potentially deadly to anyone. The dragon rises to his full height, smirking, as far as Daniel can tell. You think you can teach me? Weaklings as arrogant as you should cease to exist. In fact, it would be a waste of my time to cull you myself. He switches to the language the Datacorians use, and they flinch, looking at Daniel regretfully. It's pretty clear what was just told to them. The dragon instructed them to kill him.
Daniel laughs.
You think these people can kill me? I guess you haven't heard. Daniel lifts his rifle into his ready position. It'll be much easier to aim and fire. He's relying on his rifle once more, but he has faith. If he's good at anything, it's that he's good at making sure that he overdesigns his creations so that they are sure to work, even if they are inefficient. Naturally, he'll likely only get one shot. Regardless, he is committed now. Your pathetic red hatchling didn't last 5 minutes in my presence. The dragon's face twists, and his gaze finally locks on Bika. She flinches, falling to her knees. He then glares at Daniel once more, and Daniel smirks. He's shaking, but he's so small comparatively, it's unlikely the dragon will really notice. I keep hearing he was the Dragon Lord's brother. But, I'm surprised the dragons reign supreme if that was their best. The dragon's mouth wavers, and actual plants seem to be spilling out as green, poisonous-looking liquid also spills from between his teeth.
You wretched beast.
You would claim responsibility for our prince's death?
Princess? Oh. So, she was the Lord's sister?
That explains why she was so weak. The Datacorians finally scatter as the green dragon snarls and inhales deeply. Daniel exhales in relief. Unfortunately, Bika is still on the ground next to him, frozen in terror. He can't fail, or she'll die as well.
He takes aim.
Fortunately, anger causes many expressions to cross the dragon's face, and he opens his maw several times as he prepares a powerful breath attack. It's likely, from the noxious-looking clouds of gas, that he's about to be hit by either an acid or poison gas.
He can't hesitate.
Just as the dragon comes to a pause with its head high and chest puffed full of breath, Daniel pulls the trigger. Thunder explodes from the mouth of his rifle, and he notices from his peripherals as the Datacorians cry out almost in sync with the shot. Many dive to the ground even as they're still trying to flee the area, and Bika screams as she rolls on the ground clutching her ears. Daniel can't hear anymore either, and his ears are ringing, but being directly behind the muzzle of his rifle is the best place to be, relatively speaking, other than far away, as far as the sound is concerned. His rifle is oversized, and it kicks like a horse into his shoulder. If he didn't brace, it would break his shoulder after only a couple of shots. Normally, he'd try to anchor the front, but his battles haven't afforded him many good places to do so or to go prone and anchor it on the ground. Daniel aimed for the dragon's broad, toothy mouth. The insides of the dragon seem to be their weaknesses, and its head cocks suddenly to the side. From the angle Daniel fired, it went up through its skull via its mouth, and its brain seems to be larger than a dinosaur's would be. The skull is thin underneath, allowing the bullet to pierce. The green dragon stumbles back a step on its hind legs, but its musculature is barely functioning, and its head flops over lifelessly only an instant before the rest of its body collapses like a dropped bag of gelatin. It slams the ground with a thud, and the green liquid oozes from its mouth, along with its blood. It probably needed muscle control to spit the liquid into its breath, which would probably be magically enhanced in some way. Without its muscles, or with them completely relaxing, it drools its venom rather than spitting it. Daniel collects his footing, having been knocked back a step by his own shot's recoil. But he is able to take a calming breath, and he exhales. The Datacorians around him look at the dragon, and then at Daniel in silence. Without a word, he withdraws the large bag where the red dragon is stored. Aeloan and Karatai taught him how to read the various readouts of the magic storage bags, and he knows that the one with the dragon and the drake corpses is still only about half full, which is highly convenient. He stores the dragon's body, and he begins using the empty crates from the rations he gave to the Datacorians and a shovel to collect the fouled soil contaminated with the dragon's venom. He has no idea what its effects are, but it's definitely not safe to just leave it in the village. Stored in his bag, it's at least not contaminating anyone for unknown years to come. And if he can figure out what its nature is, he may be able to use it. Daniel finishes cleaning up, and he finds that he's being observed by the entire village. One of the older men nearby says something in their language, but Daniel taps his ear and shakes his head.
I don't understand. Sorry.
He spots Bika as she makes her way through the crowd. She's staring directly at him with shock. Pete and Weah also make their way closer, murmuring in their own language for a moment. Daniel picks out the word Feldrock, and he knows exactly what they're claiming. Daniel quickly says, "Hey,
Pete.
I told you, I don't even know what a Feldrock is. Stop telling people I'm a Feldrock sorcerer." She blushes and looks away. It starts with random villagers, who suddenly kneel and bow before him, and Daniel groans, Oh, for God's sake. He reloads his rifle as he checks his surroundings, saying, please ask them to stand up.
Pete? Bika?
He groans when he notices them, as well as Wea, also bowing. Daniel growls quietly, Bika, you have 3 seconds to explain what's going on or I leave and never come back. She quickly looks up with watering eyes, and he flinches.
It's...
You truly are as powerful as Karatai claimed. You're exaggerating. I specialize in killing dragons. If other enemies attacked me, I probably would be in trouble. He notices Pete whispering, and he points, hey.
Don't translate right now.
You're going to worsen the exaggerated impression they have of me.
Pete squeaks, but it's all true, my lord.
You are the Feldrock sorcerer who killed the Red Knight, and now the Green Sage. And with only a single attack.
Right.
And I did so with the element of surprise. If the others are able to prepare for me, I stand virtually no chance.
Do you understand?
I'd rather hunt them, rather than they hunt me. She nods reluctantly, and he turns his gaze back on Bika.
Continue, Bika.
What is a Feldrock sorcerer, and why does everyone keep insisting that I am? She sits up on her knees, saying softly, a Feldrock sorcerer is a mage capable of using omni-affinity magic, and having learned to use the 4 elements of nature in battle, as well as the 2 divine elements. Feldrocks are the only beings in history known to be able to kill a dragon in one-on-one combat, and a Feldrock sorcerer is a mortal's attempt to attain that power. Feldrocks are a creature? What are they?
She cocks her head.
She points at Daniel's shoulder, and he looks. He's still wearing a simple jacket he got from Wenliana. It depicts a dragon-like creature on the shoulder section at the top of his bicep. It has 2 triangular horns rising from its head, great majestic wings with wedges like feathers, and a spiky pointed tail. It's the sigil of the Stalvoltan Archduchy, which they called a Sol Wyrm. Bika states, that looks to be a depiction of a Feldrock, though I've never seen one myself. They're said to emanate the aura of death, and if one kills you, your soul is devoured, never to become a part of the world, and instead, fuel their most evil magic spells, which only the Feldrocks have ever known. The people I got this jacket from called this thing a Sol Wyrm. I assumed it was a species or relative of dragons.
Bika shakes her head.
We're told they're monsters, though they're extinct now. Wea adds, elders tell of them to children so they behave and don't run off on their own. They're so powerful, no one would be able to save you from them.
Daniel sighs.
Why am I being compared to something so scary?
I'm just a human.
I'm not even as strong as a normal human in this world. My power comes from my staff, and it's meant for dragons.
That's all.
Daniel doesn't want to find out what one of his approximately 20mm diameter rounds does to a human-sized body. He knows a close-range shot from a .50 caliber, which is approximately 12.5mm, does a significant amount of gruesome damage to a human body, and his 20mm rounds are approaching double the size and powder. He doesn't really want to test it, but he does wonder if his rounds could pierce the dragon's scales. Now that he has 2 corpses, he could test it for comparison, and he probably should. He has 47 bullets remaining for the rifle, and he still has all 100 of his revolver rounds. It's unlikely he'll live long enough to kill 47 more dragons, though he'll likely need to kill at least 1 more. That said, he'll still try to be conservative for now. Bika replies to Daniel's query, I don't know how to satisfy you, my lord Daniel. You killed a dragon by yourself. You must be a Feldrock sorcerer, if not a Feldrock. That's all we know. Daniel hesitates, rubbing his neck. He asks cautiously, what about an otherworlder? Bika springs to her feet, shock filling her expression, while Wea and Pete glance at her for guidance. Bika asks, why you're a magical summon. Daniel nods in confirmation. They call it divine summon, though I was just sitting alone in my home when I suddenly appeared in a castle in this world. I never met any divine beings. She trots over to him, inspecting him. Why? You look so human.
Daniel scoffs. I am human.
Or at least, I'm my world's version of human. The Mika Dressel suddenly gasps. That's why you don't have loyalty to that kingdom. And why you're willing to help us.
Daniel
explains as his confirmation. I have no patriotic loyalty to anywhere in this world. If a god or goddess was involved in my summoning here, I'd like to think there's a higher purpose than to try to assassinate the demon queen. The dragons just got in my way. And it seems, Daniel looks at the other villagers, who still longingly look upon him with respect and fear. They're a little too tyrannical for most people's tastes. Bika nods in agreement, tears renewing in her eyes. We could never do anything, she gasps. The green sage. If he doesn't return. I assume he extorts more than just you, correct? She again gives a subtle nod of confirmation. Good. That means there's some time. That said, you and your people should go into hiding until word of the Dragon Lord perishing reaches you. If it doesn't, do what it takes to survive, even if it means lying or condemning me. Just give me a head start. She stares at him, whispering, Why dash? You intend to fight the Dragon Lord? Daniel knows it's crazy, but he confirms it. Yep. He's a warmonger and an extortionist. I haven't heard a fraction of the bad things about the Demon Queen as I hear about the Dragon Lord. If anyone is the reason I'm here, it sounds like him. And the Demon Queen is a convenient scapegoat, which is why she's the queen, and he's not the kingda. She stares at him in disbelief. He shrugs, or, she's pulling the strings and I'll deal with her in time. For now? Which way to the Dragon Lord? Bika remains speechless, and Daniel points ambiguously over his shoulder. If I saw correctly, Mr. Green came from that way, so that's the direction I'll head. Thanks for all your help, Bika. Pete Wea, please continue to serve your Mika Dressel well. As Daniel departs, Bika and the other two jog after him. Wait. He pauses and turns to look at them. Yes. Why dash? You're leaving? Right now. Daniel confirms with a nod of his head. Word of my existence is going to spread quickly, which means I can't stay in one place long. Not until my most dangerous foes give up or are dead. If the Dragon Lord is anything like I expect, he'll have a pathological need to kill me, because I represent a threat to him. If he gets the drop on me, it's over. Bika Wea Pete, thank you for not killing me. I'll be going now. Farewell. He continues on his way, leaving the villagers behind in stunned silence. Fort Peony, also known colloquially as the Flower Garden, was once a semi-ceremonial fortress at the mountain range separating the allied kingdoms of the east from the demon lands of the west, but its remote and treacherous location made it almost impossible to pass through the area with a large military force. As such, it was almost entirely manned by noble women seeking to earn prestige as military personnel, but perched in a relatively safe location where their families wouldn't have to worry about them so much in theory dash. Unfortunately, a devastating attack from a dragon has left the demon side wall of the fortress in the valley melted most of the way through, but after 2 weeks of no signs of invasion, the Allied military sent a full contingency to Fort Peony and the surrounding valley clearings to strengthen and begin reconstruction. A hooded figure walks through the center of the fortress, near where a simple well had a manual hand pump attached to it. At first, the figure was ignored. After all, it was as if they had appeared inside the gate, rather than passing through, which, given the watchstanders fiercely guarding both entrances to the fortress, would be quite difficult without an alarm being raised. However, not all in this world needed to pass through a gate to arrive at a location. Or rather, those from beyond the worldly plane would have no trouble. Eventually, though, this figure, walking through an apparent daze while the fortress was busily trying to rebuild and fortify against the risk of a follow-up invasion attempt, would be noticed. It's natural in a place of fervent work to be noticed when one is idle, and even more so when not in uniform or armor. You there. Halt and declare yourself. The head of the hooded figure tilts only slightly as soldiers of all sizes, shapes, and from various commands swarmed around at the emergent call of one of their own. Commander Laywells approaches the figure with her sword drawn and a buckler on her offhand, ready to block a surprise attack. While she was the commanding officer of Fort Peony before the main garrison took over, she was always a warrior in her own right. Most soldiers in the world are prepared to fight the demons or other humanoids, including the goblins, lesser demons, Kirans, Datakorians, and all of the others, save the true demons and the dragons. Few stand a chance in battle against a true demon or a dragon. Laywell states in a more cautionary tone with a hint of dryness, strangers don't do well at the garden, stranger. I'd recommend you keep your hands where my archers can see them and lower that hood if you want to see tomorrow. Daniel. This puts Laywells off her guard for a moment. Pardon. It's a feminine voice, so it definitely isn't Daniel himself, and he hasn't been seen since the scouts retreated from when they first spotted the dragon and its vanguard force. The hooded figure looks at Laywells, and she's further disarmed by the pained expression of the young woman. To describe her appearance as heavenly wouldn't do her beauty justice. Her hair seems to glow with inhuman light, even under the hood of her robes hiding who and what she is. Her eyes sparkle deeply like a night sky. Her face is delicate and beautiful, and seems capable of producing expressions of wisdom as easily as expressions of innocence. Clang. A sword falls from an armored gauntlet. Laywells couldn't raise her sword to this being if she tried. She knows it in her gut. She doesn't know why,
But she just knows. See, Commander.
It's all right, the commander murmurs softly. The divine being speaks quietly. I was told a man named Daniel was here. I must speak with him. He's not here. Lee Wells's voice is still soft, and her head lowers in reverence. He was last seen standing against the enemy that destroyed the western wall. She gestures at the remains of the west wall of Fort Peony. This causes the divine being's face to pinch in agony.
No, she whispers.
If I may, your divinity. How was he chosen? Her eyes widen in horror as she looks at Lee Wells's face. The divine being isn't happy for some reason. In truth, Lee Wells is doing what she's always done. She's testing the person before her. She genuinely believes that this being is quite possibly an angel, if not a goddess. However, Daniel's circumstances were strange from the very moment he was summoned, let alone how he ended up all the way at Fort Peony through sheer misfortune, given what his world clearly was like. The divine being looks at Lee Wells, and then the melted wall several times each before finally replying quietly. Would you believe me if I said his summoning was an accident? This shocks the normally rock-steady commander.
Accident? A divine summon was.
That's impossible. The divine being shakes her head slowly. One summoning ritual was performed. 2 summons arrived. One possesses magic, protective blessings, and special skills unique to summons.
The other
is Daniel, fills in the commander, knowing enough at this point. The divine being nods slowly. How does something like that happen? I sincerely don't know. But I must find him and make reparations. That he survived this long without the necessary protections for this world is a miracle. And I've heard, she looks around suspiciously. Lee Wells also looks around. She whispers, his treatment. It wasn't worthy of a divine summon. The divine being makes eye contact. I need to know where he is. Do you have any idea where he could be now? Lee Wells sighs. Assuming he survived the battle. We think he headed west. Deeper into the demon wildlands. This surprises the divine being as much as it surprised everyone else when they saw the evidence. True enough, Daniel's boots were always unique, though no one really paid any mind to it until they were trying to piece together what happened during the raid on the fort. Tria and Gwenesphia left on a free scout to try to track him as far as they could, at least before they reached the edge of the scouting zone. She personally warned both of them about going beyond the scouting zone, but it's likely those words will mean very little. That's their choice to make, of course. But it doesn't satisfy the divine being who has yet to identify herself. Regardless, she was directly involved with the summoning ritual, and whatever happened, it's clear she's genuinely concerned for the hero summoned and subsequently trapped in a world with no magic of his own. Daniel idly whistles as quietly as he can. He's doing it to entertain himself, but he does realize that he's in a wild territory where he doesn't know the geography, he doesn't know where any villages or cities are, and he doesn't know the flora or fauna. While he has plenty of supplies to last himself a long while, thanks to the magic bags he claimed, the animals and plants could be predatory, or simply aggressively defensive. As such, Daniel keeps his hand close to his revolver. He still hasn't tested it officially, but assuming it works, it should be able to protect him from at least a few animals, even if he were to be cornered by a pack of wolves, or their equivalent in this world. He has been practiced swinging a sword, however, using one of the many inexpensive swords he picked up from the attackers to cut through trees and branches, practicing simple self-taught forms to hopefully be able to fend off untrained attackers or animals with a melee weapon, if possible, since his ammunition is scarce. He has only the strength of his own body to rely on, since he has no magic or divine enhancements, but if he can take out simpler enemies with a sword instead of his firearms, then he can conserve that ammo for any more dangerous threats, such as an obvious swordsman or huge enemies he wouldn't stand a chance against in melee, such as giants or the obvious dragons and drakes. He's also seen and heard other reptilian avians flying around, indicating that dragons and drakes may not be his only draconic threats. As he walks, he reaches the edge of the current wooded area he has been trekking through for the last couple of days. It opens into a sprawling open field where he has height looking out over rolling hills. It reminds him of a road trip a long time ago where he was driving through Montana, and he could see for miles thanks to his elevation as he was driving, and the vast fields, and even distant forests, that merely decorated the land ahead with color, contrasted by mountains even further in the distance. He can see a waterfall in this world, with its base obscured by mist, and a winding river cutting the countryside he's currently gazing upon. There's at least one obvious village or city in view, but what really catches his eye is something even stranger: a massive castle perched on a tall cape overlooking a massive lake that stretches far into the distance, beyond what his eyes can perceive. This castle, even from what has to be over 20 miles away, appears humongous and is clearly larger than the village. And while the castle appears to have sustained damage, given that its shape is irregular and lacks certain purpose-built structures, such as flat towers, it does have what appear to be broad entrances large enough for an airplane to land. Or, in this world, the largest and most powerful flying creatures in the world, the dragons. He grins cheekily. Wow! I never thought I'd find it. Hope they don't know what I smell like. He continues his journey down the hill, making his way for obvious wild territory, rather than civilization and farmland, as he wants to avoid being spotted and confronted. He has no allies with him now, so being caught this far west as a human will certainly mean death, if he's lucky. While Daniel might be smart enough to leverage slavery into his favor in one way or another, he's not particularly keen on finding out. If he is captured, likely a swift and painless death would be his best option. But then, he still has his tricks up his sleeve. Including his rifles, he has a few more explosives he made during idle time, and he also found some chemicals and vegetation that react into a tear gas when combined. And that's completely ignoring the venom from the green dragon and whatever substances gave rise to the red dragon's fire breath, since he still has both corpses. Since they can still be revived, he may have a bargaining chip to get him in front of the Dragon Lord, if need be. And failing that, he'll try to figure out another way. Since only those who've seen his rifle in action know what it is by looking at it, most would never assume it's a tool that can slay dragons. Which of course reminds him that he should try to figure out a way to ensure he can pierce their hides if and when the time comes, as his steel core bullets have only worked so far because he was able to get a clean shot into its mouth at the exact moment he needed to, or in through the red dragon's eye from close range. Relatively speaking, they're small targets, when his shells should do enough damage after they penetrate to kill a dragon with a wider tolerance for where he hits, if he can penetrate their armor-like scales. Of course, he's only assuming dragon scales are nigh impenetrable in this world. The best weapons of the allied kingdoms for dealing with dragons seem to be the ballista or catapults with massive bolus or chain nets to try to drag the monstrous avians out of the sky to where they can be swarmed by melee fighters, most of whom will die. In Daniel's world, many speculations were made on the possibility of dragons, or dubiousness therein, such as their wings not being able to support their weight in flight, or impenetrable scales being too heavy for them to move in any sort of meaningful way. There are many reasons physics says those things, but he's not on Earth, and he knows they can fly and breathe a fire so hot, it can melt stone like butter under a blowtorch. Gravity could be lower, elements could be stronger, and failing all of those, magic. The one thing Daniel doesn't have. Regardless, none of that brings him closer to his goal. He needs to observe the castle from afar, and if he sees another red dragon that looks more menacing than the one he has in inventory, then he needs to take it out. If he can more easily identify the Dragon Lord, he'll of course go that route. If he needs to sneak into the castle, he will. More than likely, he'll have to assassinate the Lord and vanish. It's not his ideal lifestyle, but since coming to this world, his old ways and his old comforts don't cut it. Daniel stops at a small creek that he comes across as he descends the large rolling hill towards the castle. Now that he has a definitive direction, he just needs to keep track of his general direction. He uses the water to wash his face, feeling refreshed instantly upon the cool water dousing his skin. He wasn't much of a camper on Earth, but he's managed to pick up enough to appreciate what he missed out on. The sounds of nature around him, the crisp, fresh air. The trees have darker tones and colors than Earth did, and he suspects there might be some magical aura to the flora of the demon wildlands. But, much of it also reminds him of home. Daniel enters another wooded area, watching his surroundings carefully as he walks. He stays close to trees, watching for any signs of unnatural movement, and listening. He worked on machines all his life, and something that saved him headaches time after time was the ability to listen for a sudden change in sounds from normal to even slightly different. A tree branch creaking in a weird way could mean a predatory plant or tree, like an ent straight out of fantasy novels, or mutant Venus flytraps. Feline-like creatures or people, serpents, or even potentially arachnids or insects that can keep silent and strike without warning are his biggest dangers. Keeping close to obstacles will reduce the opportunity for them to pounce him, as long as he accounts for anything being above him. Daniel snatches his revolver out of its holster and grips it tight in his right hand as he's suddenly yanked off of the ground as he's passing a large tree. He cries out in pain, but it's more of a scraping pain than a hard piercing pain. He's tumbled through the air by several large limbs, something like how a spider ambushes prey. He'll have only a moment. He makes sense of where the monster is, calling out, "Gyh," as he shoves his sword towards it, and he manages to make contact, feeling dizzy as the spinning disorients him. However, this time, there's a hitch in the movements as the monster flinches up in the tree and lines him up to bite him. He loses his sword to the violent movements, but he still has his revolver. Daniel aims and pulls the trigger, praying. He built the revolver to operate as a double action, meaning the trigger pull is harder, but it does the whole job. Cock the hammer and fire. The hammer ratchets and
boom.
Again, the monster flinches as the round splatters dark red-orange goo from a massive wound. The revolver rounds are big, and it nearly flew right out of his hand in recoil, but he did it intentionally. One of the reasons .45 caliber pistol rounds were popular on Earth was that it was, relatively speaking, a fat, slow-moving bullet, which will likely not penetrate all the way through a target. It delivers maximum force, often smashing the bullet so that its surface area increases on impact, distributing the damage even wider. Likewise, Daniel's revolver rounds are relatively fat, slow-moving bullets for their size, at around .50 caliber, with a comparable payload to more than what he recalls 4.50 AE rounds, which were used in certain pistols of Earth. The sheer impact is enough to flinch the monster and cause it to release him. Daniel thuds the ground on his back, coughing as he tries to keep his wits. He's rattled for only a second, and he quickly aims up and fires twice more. Bang! Bang! He scrambles to roll clear of the monstrous beast that was perched in the tree before its lifeless body slams the ground where he just was, its blood pooling from the 3 entrance wounds and 2 exit wounds of his revolver's rounds. One of the shots may have stuck in a bone, since he definitely sees 3 entrance shots. Given that the 2 exit wounds are each the size of serving trays, it's possible they overlapped as well. With a relieved sigh, Daniel lays on the ground for a long moment. He wants to do nothing, but he has to stay alert at least. Fortunately, save actual thunder, his weapon is probably the loudest sound the forest fauna have ever heard, and an eerie silence has befallen the forest. Daniel jokes quietly, "I hope you're happy, beastie. One of us is still going to be dinner. I just suspect you didn't plan on it being you." He looks at the creature he just slayed with a more studious eye as he rests on his back. If Daniel were asked, and he was creative enough to do so, to combine the features of a wolf, a panther, a praying mantis and a hermit crab, then he could only hope it would look like this creature. It has the fur of either or both mammals, with a wolf-like head, but the retractable claws of a feline and the more subtle ears of a feline. However, it also has 3 rear legs, the third appears to be in lieu of a tail dash, and 2 snatching forearms like a praying mantis. And to top it off, it seems to have some biological mechanism to form a shell out of tree bark like a hermit crab, or even something like a bagworm, allowing it to disguise itself as part of the tree, especially at a glance. Daniel finally rolls over and tugs on the bark briefly, finding it glued rather firmly to the creature's fur. It's likely that it can shed both over time as it grows or the bark wears out, allowing it to find new pieces to use. He notices a crust around its lips, and he briefly touches its saliva with a pair of leaves, milling it around between them until they cease to move freely. He nods as it begins to make sense.
I see.
Some component in its saliva serves as the adhesive.
Air activated? No.
It would glue its own mouth and throat shut.
Friction.
Yes, friction is most likely. Like a cat grooming itself, it activates the glue while applying it, sticks bark on when it's good and tacky, and then lets it dry.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Daniel makes a note of that information for later. He doesn't need glue at the moment, but a friction-activated glue may prove useful if he needs one later, and he should be able to extract the residual from the creature's mouth and saliva glands when he does. As such, Daniel finds an axe in his gear bag, and he severs the monster's head, allowing him to store it separately from the body. That way, he doesn't risk wasting the saliva when he extracts the body to carve useful pieces of meat from it. I should also do something with the dragons. I wonder if I can find a way to turn a tooth into a bullet. That could solve my fear of my iron cores not being hard enough to penetrate. I imagine dragons can harm other dragons. With that, Daniel continues on his path towards the castle he saw. As night falls, he extracts one of the shelter shells, and he even weighs it down from the inside with anything heavy from his inventory. He won't be able to escape easily, but hopefully, nothing else will be able to flip the shell and disturb his sleep, allowing him to sleep peacefully. After making breakfast in his shelter, Daniel takes the moment of peace to sort his inventory some more, with at least the things he can extract inside the shell and organize as much as possible. It's not much bigger than a tent, but it's more than enough for him to work in comfort. After, he cleans up his bunkering weights and barricades, and then checks outside before crawling out of the shell. Nothing is around him, so he stores the shell and continues on his way. Conveniently and inconveniently, depending on the situation, the magic storage bags don't really care what the contents of the thing Daniel is storing are. If he leaves his favored shell set up with a bed mat, cooking equipment, and other items in containers, they will be stored with the shell exactly as he left them. Currently living things are the only things that seem to be stripped of whatever they had, for some reason. Regardless, because he selects the item he wants to extract via the magic hologram crystal, it doesn't really matter what's inside, though of course, the magic itself is based on mass, and not volume, so he can't cheat the bag's storage volume by storing things inside the shell. The only way to cheat is to put things inside of other magic bags and store those, since the mass of the objects inside is technically in another dimension. He assumes. Either way, it's been working, so he doesn't question it too much. Thankfully, he doesn't have any real reason to rush to find the Dragon Lord. The sooner he can defeat it, the sooner the world would likely be in a better place. However, he's not a member of this world. He's not trying to disturb the balance of power, but he is the only one that can deal with dragons, it seems. At least, he is the only one with a means for single-handedly dealing with them. If Daniel kills the Dragon Lord, it's increasingly less likely that the demons will attempt another invasion in any near future, from what he's been hearing all around. The Demon Queen seems to be fairly conservative. Why she invaded eastward at all remains to be seen, but she hasn't actively pressed the borders, save for when the dragons attempt something. He'd like to meet her and find out what he's up against, if possible, but for now, he needs to remove the primary aggressor. Due to the distance, it takes a couple of days for Daniel to close the distance on the castle he saw. Naturally, its massive size is like trying to approach a mountain in the distance. It takes a lot longer than one would think, thanks to how clearly visible it is, and yet, it never seems to get closer. And the closer he does actually get to it, calling it a mountain isn't far from the truth. The castle is truly massive. It can't have belonged to humans. Given the size of all of the windows, the structures for landing and perching, or looking out, it had to have been constructed for nothing less than the dragons. Of course, the damage seems to have been ignored. A great battle took place sometime long in the past, and the mountainous fortress had trees and shrubs growing in the rubble and on unnatural perches like those on the steep mountainsides of Earth where birds would nest. Either the dragons don't care about the defensibility of their fortress nor its aesthetics, or they are somewhere else. But for now, he has only the path ahead of him. Until he confirms the giant fortress is absent any and all dragons, he needs to make his way close enough to determine that. Finally, after 7 more days of walking, Daniel reached the fortress. As he speculated from so far away, much of the castle looks like ancient ruins, rather than an actual fortress. And strangely enough, it seems to have been made with humans in mind to some degree. While the castle entrances are too big to say that, there are tons of ruined and ancient house-like structures within the castle walls, each possessing standard-looking doorways and window openings set to human or close to human standards. A quick thought in Daniel's mind is that the fortress is or was home to dragons serving as royalty, while servants, soldiers, and other vassal citizens were of the many varying races of the world. It actually makes a lot more sense, since that's exactly the breakdown of the attacking vanguard that hit Fort Peony. However, it's clear this fortress is no longer active. At least, in the home of royalty sense. Someone else seems to have taken interest in the giant castle, and it gives Daniel pause when he spots the individual. It's a small childlike figure with broad triangular ears and a big fluffy tail, like she's part fox, all with black hair on her head and black fur on her ears and tail. While it's hard to tell for certain, the features strongly suggest a young girl, stick-like arms and a petite body with soft, doll-like features on her face. She's wearing rags for clothes, and yet has a simple beat-up sword and a wooden buckler with a chunk missing out of its surface area. Given her small size, even a simple buckler shield is close in comparative size to a standard shield for a full-grown man, but it looks like it would crumble under 1 or 2 more impacts from even a light blow. And, the girl seems intent on going into the castle on her own. Daniel sighs as he sits in his secluded hiding place in one of the destroyed buildings.
Don't do it, Daniel.
You have no idea who or what she is. If she's here to hunt dragons as well. He closes his eyes in frustration at himself. If she is here to fight dragons, then her flimsy and worn-out sword and frail wooden buckler. Daniel claws in frustration at his hair in idle resistance to the urge in his heart and gut.
No.
Don't do this. You'll regret it. He glances at the massive entrance one last time to see the last traces of the girl as she disappears into inky darkness of the gloomy and forlorn castle. The castle that is probably full of monsters if not dragons themselves. The castle, if not infested with monsters, is undoubtedly home to dangerous animals. Like the creature that nearly made a meal out of Daniel himself. He stands up with a sigh. He grumbles under his breath, "Please let me even be able to help. And if I do, please don't kill me myself." When Liana stares idly at the rough, imperfect, carbon-scored diamond in her fingers. It represents the first of a wild string of successes that have all but singularly boosted the Grand Duchy of Stalvolten to a level of wealth competing with the Empire itself, let alone any of the other kingdoms. Although, waging the suppression of the revolution in Bromlund quickly made use of much of that wealth, the Stalvoltan territory was now more influential and more powerful than ever. And all of it starts with a single man-made diamond.
No, she thought.
It started much earlier than that. She'll likely never forgive him. The king regent from the same world as Daniel, King Rikudo Tachibana, sent Daniel to the edge of the world. He sent him to the very front lines of the war with the demons. And he did so to pacify noble fathers and sons who only saw Princess Aramaya as a thing to besmirched by the hands of another man, rather than a life that Daniel saved through techniques his world teaches to children where practical. And now, several months later, the news has finally reached them. Daniel faces off against a dragon and its vanguard alone and hasn't been seen since. Arameliana's intelligence forces weren't fast enough to reach Fort Peony before it was evacuated, and they naturally stayed at the main garrison to aid in shoring defenses in preparation for desperately holding off the dragon, only for it to never arrive. Given that there were no signs of the dragon being felled by the Otherworlder, and no signs of his death being put on display, it's entirely possible they knew of his otherworldly status and took him prisoner. Just as when Liana and so many in the kingdom and the Grand Duchy had their lives vastly improved, Daniel's wisdom could accelerate the demons the same number of decades or centuries ahead of where they are now, if given the time and resources. And given how he was treated both in the kingdom and more importantly at the fort, it's entirely possible he advertised his Otherworlder status the moment the vanguard arrived, and some in the intelligence branch believe he even may have done so in exchange for ceasing the invasion, given what they all knew about his personality. While this is noble at face value, the detriments of the demons gaining access to the technology inside Daniel's brain are potentially unfathomable. Especially if the dragons can be made truly invincible through his efforts. It already takes an army to defeat a single dragon, and only the dragon itself dash. And that's still if they're lucky to begin with. A dragon armed with something Daniel could create. Or worse, the rest of the demon army becoming as tough or comparable to dragons. When Liana squeezes her hand around the diamond, praying softly, Daniel wouldn't try to harm anyone. If he did agree to go willingly, she has no doubt he did so with the truest of good intentions. Strangely though, the Dawnseer died suddenly in her sleep after crying out in agony for a long moment, unable to be awakened. Given the stream of worsening visions involving the man wielding a terrifying magic staff slaying a dragon and allying with death itself before erasing the horizon, it was likely an even more clear vision of the same events. Unfortunately, there is no way to know for certain if the visions are related to Daniel or Rikudo, or to someone else now that she's passed on. They were originally summoned to this world because the Dawnseer began having the premonition. But, it seems even attempting to divert a river can be the exact path to the flood to be avoided. It's possible the Dawnseer didn't prevent the premonition, she directly played into it coming true. And unfortunately, it could have been that realization that caused the Dawnseer to not awaken ever again. Regardless, Wen Liana is not a particularly superstitious person. She understands magic has many capabilities beyond natural limits. However, the future is something dubious at best. To believe one can clearly see the future, and then alter it, is to assume one can move all of the water out of the ocean. Physically, it should be possible, but it isn't practical in the slightest. There is nowhere to put the water of the ocean. And likewise, there is nowhere to put all of the possibilities of the future and claim with certainty that it can be controlled in any meaningful way. The premonition is either accurate, but unpreventable in the sense that doing nothing could just as likely have caused it as doing something. Perhaps the Demon Queen would have been the one to attempt a divine summoning if the kingdom hadn't. Perhaps the Empire. Perhaps it could have been spontaneous. If Daniel or Rikudo actually are the subject of the premonition, then their hostility could be easily rationalized, having been yanked to this world out of the blue with no obvious way to return to their world. If the premonition is depicting Daniel or Rikudo, it's a rod of their own making for the world that dragged them in. Knock, knock, knock. When Liana jumps a little, pulled from her ponderings by a knock at the door. She states with her dulled tone, "Enter." The door opens, revealing the head maid. She bows, stating, "My lady, the Grand Duchess has asked for you to come to the reception room." "What is it?" asks Wen Liana, her once vibrant personality dulled by the absence that grows heavier by the day. She would not say. "She instructed me to inform you, my lady, that she will be perturbed if she has to come get you herself." Wen Liana sighs. Once upon a time, she and her mother had a rather benign neglect for each other. Wen Liana has never been a noble at heart, she's a scientist and a dreamer. Daniel's arrival, specifically, exacerbated her proclivities towards reclusive behavior in her research. And her mother allowed all of it. Powerful mages can circumvent many of the stigmas and drawbacks to maturing beyond the normal marrying age in most cases, or they end up never seeking marriage and children to begin with. Knowing she could never stop her eldest daughter's obsession, Arameliana stayed out of her way, and even enabled her. But then, Since Wenliana's retirement from the royal court and Daniel's arrival at the estate, Arameliana has been more intrusive into Wenliana's day-to-day. Though the spirit of her obsession has definitely lowered so. The young former court magic artisan sighs. She has no reason to object. She wasn't doing anything productive anyways. Most of her current projects are either on hold or cooking themselves, such as diamonds, which take time to form while under the appropriate conditions. She's been making a mix of large and small diamonds of blue and white, making magic crystals and jewelry as appropriate. Wenliana makes her way into the reception room of the estate, where messengers and guests are generally guided to for making announcements to the Grand Duchess and her family and retainers. She curtsies politely in her lab smock, as there's an audience that isn't just her mother and sisters. Grand Duchess, please excuse the delay. Arameliana waves her over casually. Drop all that and come over here, Wenliana. There's something we need you to look at. Wenliana nods obediently and walks over. The apparent soldier of the Stalvoltan Reconnaissance Corps, Wormeyes, presents an object to Wenliana.
Her eyes widen.
Daniel left his cell phone behind and had shown her how to operate it. She's still translating his language, and it appears there are more than just a single language present on his device, but as long as she keeps it charged and doesn't break it, it is a precious source of wisdom. And one of the things that he mentioned he hoped he would never make. She recognizes the small, single-ended tube. She snatches it from the soldier, and she inspects it. It was obviously handmade, but it matches the exact design of the gold-colored metal objects that feed the weapon Daniel was reluctant to make. Her eyes begin to water, and she sharply asks, "Where did you find this?" The soldier recoils a little in shock from the sudden spark of passion coming from the small woman. Her sudden flash of emotion is surprising, though her obvious small frame is no threat to the seasoned soldier. "My lady, this was found on the western wall of Fort Peony, near where the wall had been melted." Wenliana starts to scramble towards her lab, but she halts herself when she realizes she's still in mixed company expecting her input on what it is. She flinches in several directions as her brain tries to summon an answer to her burning question. She flinches and then uses a trick he taught her. Her index finger knuckle is close. She gapes in surprise. Arameliana asks, "What is it, Wenliana? Use your words." This is a trick he taught me to make basic estimations for measurement. He once told me about a weapon in his world that could attack at range, but wasn't a bow or ballista, could penetrate stone, metal armor, and even possibly dragon scale. But the diameter of a bullet would be about half an index knuckle. She demonstrates her makeshift measurement. The opening of the casing was almost as wide as her index knuckle. And the tube itself was as long as her hand from fingertip to wrist. "What are you saying, Wenliana?" asks the Grand Duchess with a sense of seriousness in her tone. The best way to explain it is, this is like an arrow for Daniel's weapon. Or rather, the bowstring to propel the arrow. She looks at Arameliana, saying with her own tone of seriousness. An arrow built by an otherworlder hoping to be able to penetrate dragon scale, if he needed to. Everyone in the room is surprised by this statement. Military advisors to the Grand Duchess, her equivalent to a prime minister, other advisors and leading soldiers, and the Wormeyes advanced recon soldiers who had been the ones to search Fort Peony thoroughly for signs of Daniel. They had been able to send messages back to the Grand Duchy, but they only just returned, allowing them to show the peculiar item that no one at the fort could identify, other than that Daniel had made it. Only Wenliana had seen one, and only in picture form in Daniel's phone, which only she knows about or how to use. The Prime Minister remarks quietly, "If that is part of his dragon-slaying weapon then." Arameliana nods as she too agrees with the building notion. "Yes. Who died, and who departed westward after?" Wenliana squeezes the shell casing as she holds it to her chest, tears forming in her eyes. Once more, her hope has been renewed. This is almost as good as a letter from Daniel himself. If he made a dragon-slaying weapon, then the reason the dragons never attacked further. A small smile spreads across her lips. She murmurs in reply to her mother and the Prime Minister, "He's alive. How could he still not be found?" The Dragon Lord boomed, and his voice rumbled the castle. All present, including the handful of surviving dragons, flinch in fear. In thousands of years, there have only been 2 dragons slain in the entirety of their history prior to the Dragon Lord's brother's disappearance. Dragons struggle to raise hatchlings to adolescence, let alone adulthood. Their abilities, lacking control, are just as dangerous to a dragon's own self as to their enemies. Venoms can kill in seconds, flames can melt flesh and scale, and teeth can pierce and tear. Many hatchlings accidentally kill themselves long before they gain the intelligence or wisdom to control their own powers. As such, their number are few, but their lives are long. At present, there are 12 dragons, not including the Lord's brother and the green forest dragon who was collecting tribute from various villages. Witnesses saw the Lord's brother slain with their own eyes, and torture and magic proved they weren't lying. And, as if to add depth to this mystery, the green dragon, and the second eldest dragon in existence, has disappeared. He was merely collecting tribute from villages of lesser races, including the felines, some lesser demon races, and sacrifices from the goblins. However, around half of the villages reported turning in their tribute, while others desperately pleaded for mercy, as he had never arrived at the normal time. The servants kneeling before the Dragon Lord say nothing. There is no excuse to be made. Nothing would satisfy the powerful, aggressive red dragon as he paces in place in fury. Flames swirl from his mouth and his skin begins to glow in lines between his scales. He wasn't only searching for news of this apostle of despair, but the green dragon as well. Both haven't been seen in weeks, and the disappearance of a second dragon can only likely mean one thing. Smoke and fire bursts in puffs from the Lord's mouth as he roars, "Find this apostle and kill him. Bring the shattered remains before me." The servants nod and dash away. The Lord paces again in impotent fury. There's nothing he can do. With the ability to kill a dragon, the apostle's magic power should be off the charts. Other than the dragons gathered in his mountain stronghold, the demon queen, the feral Feldrock, a frail elderly leaf-eared human in the east, and a sea creature slumbering deep in the inaccessible depths are all that he can sense from their magic sources who even remotely compare to himself, other than the Devourer, but that last one goes without saying. This apostle of despair exists. Of that, the Dragon Lord is certain. Otherwise, his own brother would still be alive. That his body is being defiled by those filthy humans. It makes his skin hiss with searing heat. Regardless, he cannot make a move until he can find and destroy this wretched sorcerer. They can't afford to lose any more dragons, especially given that he and one other are the last surviving males, and the remaining 10 dragons are all female. My lord, it was the eldest dragon female, the pearlescent dragon, shimmering like a star in daylight. She is mature and reserved, as well as wise. Unfortunately, she is no warrior the way some of the others are. What? Snarls the Lord. I think it is in our best interest to consider the possibility. What possibility? The possibility that we may need to negotiate with this apostle. His eyes nearly burst from the sudden pressure he feels in all of his body. He flashes close to her, snarling with a dark smoke rolling from his mouth. You dare suggest such a pathetic idea? This creature is nothing more than a human. A lowly mammal with a lifespan of but a mere blink. I would never debase the great dragon race so low.
She doesn't flinch.
She is the only one who didn't, even considering she was the target of his motion. He didn't harm her, and perhaps, some deep part of her knew that he couldn't actually afford to do so. As such, her reply nearly shatters the castle itself from how sharp, cold, and impudent it is. Then, being debased by being slain is acceptable? The air seems to turn cold. The Lord has no reply. His jaw begins to waver as his anger and stupefaction swirl through his mind. He snarls in a low voice, barely containing the actual rage threatening to roil out of his body. If you speak these words again, I will kill you. Do not test me. She bows her head without a word. The orange dragon, one of the middle seniority dragons, but youngest of the greater dragons, speaks cautiously. My lord, my servants have mentioned the lesser races murmuring of something that may displease. Out with it, growls the Dragon Lord, not yet taking his anger-filled gaze on the pearlescent dragon. There is a being the lesser races are calling the Feldrock sorcerer, my lord. The Dragon Lord snaps his gaze to her, and Amber Dragon, his primary mate, nods in agreement. I have heard the same, my lord, murmurs the last surviving male. It is likely this Feldrock sorcerer is the apostle. The Dragon Lord thinks for only a moment. Round up anyone who has mentioned the Feldrock sorcerer and bring them here. Go. The dragons bow, as well as their servants, and they all retreat from the Dragon Lord's den. He stares out at the land far below their mountain. Somewhere out there is a being somehow related to the Feldrocks, and yet,
it's impossible.
Soon, even the last of the Feldrocks will be.
No. It's a bluff.
This being will prove to be nothing more than a human. It's a last-ditch effort. She has lost him. Not that she ever had a beat on him, since she never realized he had been summoned until it was too late. But, she needs to find her lost summon. She has to make her mistake right. Rukana knows she is stained with this mistake for the rest of all eternity. She'll never forgive herself, and she doesn't expect anyone else to either. Least of all does she expect Daniel's forgiveness. She hasn't had a moment's rest since she learned of it. She has been scouring everywhere she could, tracing every little clue she could find. She found the Chi-Rinis town, but they feigned ignorance. The same happened at a village of the tiger-like Datakorians. She could tell that his name prompted a reaction, but he had more loyalty than the suspicion she garnered, even taking the forms of each respective race. It took her days to find each of the villages, but knowing that they became especially suspicious of her when she mentioned Daniel's name proves he's still alive, or was recently enough to have come to these villages. The problem now is, where is he? I can't let this go on. Come forth, my faithful observers.
Rukana waves her hand.
She's standing on the precipice of the mountain. Neither the cold nor the lower oxygen will have any effect on her or the observers. And in an instant, all 12 of her observers materialize around her. Yes, my lady. Command us, and it shall be done.
She hesitates. This is it.
If I admit it now, everyone will learn of.
No. I will make this right.
Finding my lost summon is far more important. She clears her throat and straightens her posture. My loyal observers, there is a crisis I have been trying to keep quiet, but it appears to be beyond my power. All of them look up in shock with wide eyes.
They flinch, quickly looking back down.
She adds a surprising revelation. No. You have every right to be surprised. I have made a grave mistake. Daniel's summoning was not according to plan. I was careless with the summoning power and pulled him in while summoning Rikudo. As you undoubtedly know, I spoke to Rikudo, gained his acceptance, assigned him appropriate abilities, and transferred him.
However, Daniel.
I had no idea he had transferred until it was brought up to me at that time I asked you about him. The observers were silent. A few shared silent glances, mostly with those across from each other where it would be subtle enough not to be noticed.
Think what you want. Say what you want. Tell whom you want.
But first, I need your help. I need help finding him. I have no way of finding him through my power.
I don't know why.
I have lost his trail, and he's in dangerous territory. As a human in the territory he's in, he's likely to be killed the instant he's spotted. So please, she bows to the observers, causing them to recoil in shock. Please help me find him and return him to his world safely. I need your help. I need to search. There's a long, awkward silence. The gods and goddesses were exactly that because they were divine. To have made such a mistake, and then to admit to it on behalf of a mortal. Graham declares without a hint of doubt after the awkwardness threatens to grow into a tangible being, leave the search to us, my lady. The others quickly snap into unison, proving an unfaltering loyalty in spite of their confusion and concern. Yes, allow us, my lady. We shall find him. I dedicate my being to protecting the displaced hero, my lady. I do as well. One after the other, all 12 of the observers pledge their all to finding and recovering Daniel. Rukana sighs in what little relief she can scrounge.
Thank you all.
While I need you not to destabilize this world through any offensive intervention if possible, I permit you to use any stealth and defensive strategies available to you to find and retrieve Daniel of Earth. His safety is of the utmost priority. All 12 observers confirm once more, yes, my lady. Go forth and I too shall continue the search. They bow once more, vanishing into thin air. Rukana stares out over the vast lands of the demon wildlands as this world's denizens call them. She can see a massive black stain on the land far to the west, as if the very land itself is being consumed. It's likely related to whatever threat the people of this world tried to perform the specialized magic in the first place. Some worlds are secretly given the secret to performing a summoning ritual to help keep their world stable. She murmurs softly, trying to listen to the world as a whole.
Daniel. Please be okay. Tell me where you are, and I shall come.
Suddenly, as she listened quietly, a sound that doesn't belong in this world yet rang out and echoed through the sky, reaching the ears of the goddess. From this distance, it was little more than a sharp double crack with a long trailing echo. The world Rikuto and Daniel come from, Earth, had ranged weapons that send a projectile at supersonic speeds using a small explosion. Those two distinct cracks were the supersonic crack of the explosion, followed instantly by the bullet itself breaking the sound barrier, or vice versa, depending on the direction of the shot and which one's supersonic report was reaching her the sliver of a second sooner. Somewhere in this world, a firearm, a big one by the sound of it, was just fired. She scans the relative direction desperately. Observers. Yes, my lady.
We heard.
We shall search diligently in that direction.
Good. Please do. And hurry.
If he's moving. She trails off her telepathic thought. If he's on the move again, and they don't find his trail, they're not the only ones who might find him thanks to his weapons. She has always been a slave. That will never change. She is pathetic and weak and ugly. She heard that every day since she was a tiny child. She'll never understand. All she does understand is that if she is killed in this place, no one will care. No one will remember her. The citadel is a massive structure, and its interior is like a labyrinth simply because of its massive size and interior darkness. It's said that the citadel was once the fortress of the Feldrox, and the ancient beings gave the structural technology to the humans and other races. Humans and dwarves were the two races specifically that made prolific use of the designs, as warmongering races that they are. But there are statues and other decorations scattered all around the citadel, indicating the castle didn't serve only the purpose of war. However, it's dark.
Very dark.
Her own eyes adjusted, but it's still hard to see across the hallways, let alone from one end to the other. Her rusted and worn-down sword is stained with blood now, the remnants of the few weak creatures she was able to defeat, a handful of feral goblins and imps, bog crabs in the few water pools around the cavernous castle, and some kind of frail human-looking creature that was more emaciated and underfed than she is. Fortunately, she's stronger than they all were, but she's far from the strongest being in the fortress.
Now, her sword is all she has.
She's panting and trying to catch her breath, and her stomach burns with hunger as her dry throat scratches at her senses. She can't leave the citadel, especially since she made it finally. She was given orders to conquer the citadel, and now that she's entered its perimeter, the effect of the enslavement spell will prevent her from leaving, as that would be a violation of her orders. She must fight until she is victorious or die. She was going to eat one of the feral goblins, but a towering ogre appeared and caught her off guard, slamming her in the shield and shattering it once and for all. She was able to scramble away, but the ogre set to eating the creature she had just killed, just like all the other times. Every creature she defeated in the citadel seemed to attract more and stronger creatures, and she couldn't defeat them. Not with her original strength, and not with her diminishing strength now that she's starving and exhausted. Desperation starts to claw at her mind. She is currently spying on the ogre as it lumbers around, dragging its massive club. Her arm still aches fiercely. It's probably broken and useless to her now. Her tail is a giant ball of fur, but it can give her some defensive protection if she's fast about putting it between herself and an attack, but like anything else, it's tattered and weak with her poor health and nutrition. Her eyes water in anger and sadness as she watches the ogre enviously and hatefully. So enviously and hatefully, she loses control of her anger, and she screams as she runs towards it. She tries to jam her sword into its spine, but it turns, surprised by her charge. It batters her aside with a single swing of its club. She screams as she slams into the wall nearby. She struggles to rise to her feet. Her orders compel her to. She has to conquer the citadel or die.
Until then, she has to fight.
She slumps to the ground, losing what little strength she had. She pants as she watches the giant lumber towards her slowly with its stupid grin on its face. "Aren't you a big bastard?" remarks a male voice from nearby with sarcasm in his voice. Just as both she and the ogre look, a medium-sized figure between the three of them jumps in, spearing a sword of his own into the ogre's neck. He is quick to slash to the side, using his weight, and he intentionally slips under its club arm as it tries to swing in reflex at its attacker. The newcomer wrenches his sword from the other side, using the ogre's backswing for additional leverage and strength as it now tries to swing back across and pivot. Its own strength helps the warrior and carves through its neck, taking its head clean off. The lifeless body of the ogre slams to its knees before her, and then flops to the ground next to her as the head rolls like a stone a few yards away. The newcomer straightens himself and looks around, like he's listening.
Or, can he not see very well?
Her eyes widen once more.
A human?
That staff, it's so strange. With that, she loses strength and falls unconscious. Asterisk the massive castle he had stumbled across. It seems the little girl he rescued in an attempt to attack him, lost her strength at the last moment once more and collapsed onto him. He knows this, since he was sitting against the wall of the shell shelter, and the same rusty and dented dagger/tiny sword that the girl was using to fight is now laying next to his leg and her hand. Daniel ponders for a moment. It's true he's technically in enemy territory. The demon races are likely to easily recognize a human, and humans are generally the face of the Eastern Kingdoms and Empire, meaning they are at war. A lone human wandering around is less than an enemy and an easy target. Of course, a little girl with fox-like ears and a bushy black tail would be an easy target for someone like Daniel, it would seem, given how defenseless she is with her weakness. She's been unconscious for a while, and he didn't necessarily want to waste potations on a potential, and now apparently confirmed hostile person. His weak heart continues to leave a guilty feeling in him. Once more, he sighs in relation to the small girl. Daniel carefully pulls the girl up into a more comfortable position and covers her with the blanket. He then puts his gloves back on and extracts his magic bag, then sorting through for the potation bag. He alternates some simple rations and a healing potation with water, slowly feeding the young girl in her unconscious state so that the healing potation will work. The food will put something on her stomach to offset the alcohol's effects on her tiny body, and the water will help her rehydrate. She doesn't seem to have any obvious blood loss, so her gravest injuries appear to be internal. Daniel also decides to feed her an antidote, since it'll both prevent her from getting drunk and help flush her own blood's toxic effects from her body, as well as anything else that might be plaguing her from her pitiful state. Once he allows her to sleep a little more and her stomach to ideally settle, Daniel decides he needs to do something about her pitiful outfit. It doesn't bring him joy, but he has a lot of gear from the invaders that he doesn't need, and if she moves too much as it is now, the parts of her body that should remain her secrets are exposed anyways. Daniel sets the girl down on the bedding again, and then tucks her in, finding clothes and light armor that should fit her, as well as a much newer blade roughly the same size as the one she had. None of the invaders had shields, since it was the mage's jobs to block any incoming projectiles. Too bad they can't think faster than sound. He scoffs lightly at his own internal joke. Technically, the bulk of the army was incapacitated by his landmines and being driven to retreat by the dragon and Drake falling. Daniel idly checks his revolver and rifle once more, making sure they're combat ready, and he then extracts the dragon tooth he managed to finally break free of the dragon's head after dropping the whole thing from the top of an extremely tall tree. Naturally, he recollected everything, and with the tooth shards, he worked to rework a couple of each of his bullets to contain the dragon tooth shards. It should be hard enough to penetrate the dragons, and his bullets can act as a sabot for the dragon tooth shards. If the dragon tooth shard can penetrate, and the metal of the rest of the bullet obliterates interior flesh the way the relatively soft metals are supposed to, the impact can be exactly as desired. Afterwards, he begins cooking a small breakfast. He ensures there's plenty for the girl, since he can store the leftovers in the magic bag, where time will be stopped, and it'll be as hot as the moment he put it in there. As he's cooking though, he notices the girl stirring.
She sits up, looking around.
She notices the dagger and clothes. Instantly, she snatches the dagger and whirls to face Daniel, going on defensive instantly. She growls like a feral girl might, trying to intimidate him, but unclear about whether or not she can defeat him while he's conscious. Daniel states as gently as he can, keeping his hand on a blanket near him.
Let's stay calm, little lady.
I'm not your enemy right now.
Let's talk.
If she tried to pounce, he might be able to pin her down without hurting her too badly, but she obviously has at least some experience attacking with a dagger, given the blood that was on her old one. However, his words cause her to hum in thought, even though she stays on guard. He starts patiently, let's get this out of the way. Can you understand me? She confirms with a nod. All right, perfect. My name is Daniel. What's yours?
She shakes her head. No? All right.
Can you tell me why you're here? She shakes her head vigorously again.
A secret, huh? All right.
How about? He hears her stomach growl, and she flinches, glancing briefly at the food cooking over the small fire Daniel has burning.
He grins. Are you hungry?
She glares at him, and he plates some of the food, some kind of meat and a potato-like vegetable he got from the rations of the invaders. He's had them both before, so he knows it's good.
Here you go.
Eat as much as you like. I can make more. He slides the plate towards her, and she grips the dagger, glancing multiple times between the plate and Daniel. Daniel retreats to his corner of the shelter and plates a meal for himself, snacking on it. The girl hesitantly takes a seat and snatches a piece of the meat with her free hand, keeping her eyes suspiciously on Daniel. She sniffs it cautiously, flinching in surprise. She nibbles it and squeaks in pleasant shock. She shoves the meat into her mouth and chews ferociously as the dagger leaves her hand long enough for her to begin shoveling food into her mouth. She has mostly sharp, shark-like teeth, rather than humanoid cutters and crushers, so they make quick work of the meat and potatoes without a need for her to slow down much. Just as she's starting to lick the plate, Daniel hands her the rest of his own, and she flinches. She glances at her plate, and then his. She greedily snatches it from him and suspiciously watches him as she eats the second serving. Daniel saw it coming. She looks absolutely ragged, so it was expected she'll scarf down as much as she can get a hold of. Daniel makes enough to sate his own hunger, and he makes idle small talk though with a point dash. You know, your old dagger was pretty dull and worn out. Would have been pretty painful for me. She pauses her ravenous eating to stare at him. He states, if you decide to try again, I ask you to make it quick and painless if you would. He points at his own wrists and shows her. She glances at the dagger and then at Daniel. Finally, her gaze slowly trails down to her food, and she looks away from him. She slowly resumes eating, now refusing to make eye contact with Daniel. He finishes his own food and peeks through his scouting spots to determine if they are safe leaving. The girl sets her plate down and sits on her knees, demonstrating a seemingly intentional posture that would prevent her from being able to attack him as effectively. She's even sitting on the dagger, though she still won't look at Daniel. He says warmly, "Did that fill you up? Now then, behind you, there are some clothes and gear. That's all for you.
I hope you'll wear it.
It should keep you a little safer while we're here." She glances at the clothes, surprised. She finally locks eyes with Daniel once more, and he nods with a smile.
Yes.
"It's all for you. I had them, but they won't fit me, so I won't need them. Please accept them." She fidgets for a moment and then stands up, shedding her ragged coverings, and Daniel looks away. The girl squirms into the clothes as best as she can, but when she gets stuck, Daniel sighs. He helps her get dressed, and when he's finishing with a simple leather chest plate to protect her chest, their faces are right in front of each other, and she looks into his eyes. He smiles, saying, "There. Now you're a proper fighter." Her eyes water, and she looks away. Daniel sits back, and he asks cautiously, "Still don't want to talk to me?" She shakes her head, but then quickly stops herself, seemingly confused, and she begins nodding. But her confusion grows worse, and she speaks at him, but not in Imperial Common.
Ah.
"So that's it. You understand me fine, but you don't speak my language." Her eyes widen, and she nods quickly.
She speaks again, but he says, "Sorry.
"I only speak Imperial Common, and I don't understand any other languages. If you can understand me, though, that's better than nothing." She hesitantly nods, understanding what he's saying. After a moment, a thought seems to hit her, and she drops to the ground. She uses her finger to draw in the sand and dirt of the ancient castle. Daniel watches for a moment. As she draws, he recognizes the shape as either a dragon or...
He asks, Feldrak.
She snaps her eyes up to meet his gaze with astonishment in her eyes. She nods vigorously. She points at herself and then hits the drawing she just created with a fist. "You're going to fight a Feldrak?" She nods again with a grin, seemingly happy that Daniel is understanding. She then scribbles a castle and points at herself again, drawing a circle around the castle and humming triumphantly. "Think I get it? You're here to defeat a Feldrak and conquer this castle." She hums in approval, nodding happily. Daniel asks skeptically, "Do you think you can?" She flinches, and her vibrance immediately dissolves. She looks away from him. She is silent for a long time. She extracts the dagger, looking at it for a long time. Daniel watches her cautiously. He thinks they're on friendly enough terms now that she's not about to attack him, but... He snatches her wrist with the dagger as she moves to use it. She whines as tears start to stream from her face. She whines, fighting against him, but Daniel holds fast. She wasn't targeting him this time. The tip of the dagger already drew a little blood from her own wrist. Daniel growls, "This isn't the time for that. I wasn't asking you because I want you to give up. Though, that's probably the best option.
But, I'm not an idiot.
A girl like you wouldn't be stupid enough to attack a Feldrak with what you had. I don't even know what one is, and even I know that much." She still fights against him, and she tries to pry her hand free. He already disarmed her, so her fate is now in his hands for the moment. "I'm guessing you can't go home, so it was better to fight impossible odds and die than to try to leave, huh?" She looks at him with hurt in her eyes, but her squirming finally stopped. "You're in luck. I'm actually here on my own business. And I might be able to kill the Feldrak, if I can't reason with it. But as you can probably guess, I can't see that well in the dark. Fortunately, enemies seem to have just enough mana to glow in pitch-black darkness." Daniel definitely noticed that when he was rescuing the girl. The giant creature he killed and the girl were both barely visible to him, but given the inky darkness, it was enough for him to attack. Daniel's declaration causes the girl to finally relax, and she stares at him. Once more, he nods reassuringly.
"Yep. So, what do you say?"
"Work together with me, and we'll conquer this castle. I'll hopefully accomplish what I want, and you'll be able to go home.
Or live here."
"Whichever you want." He eases his hand off of her wrist, and she rubs it for a moment as she thinks. She points at Daniel, speaking, though they both know he can't understand her. Just as suddenly, she points to herself, and then puts her hands together again and gestures at her drawings. He confirms warmly, "Yes. You and me work together.
Teammates. A truce or alliance.
What do you say?" She thinks for only one last moment, and then she nods. Without hesitation, she bows on the ground. Daniel pats her shoulder. "That's not necessary. We're teammates, so we're equals in my eyes, alright? I don't care about anything else.
She looks up at him.
Either way, I still need to know what to call you. My name is Daniel, so if you need my attention, just call, alright?
Daniel. Daniel.
Yep, confirms Daniel.
It's a human name. So, what about yours?
Just tell me what your name is.
She shakes her head.
She says a bunch of words together. Daniel asks gently, You don't have a name? She nods solemnly.
I see. Then, he sighs.
Would you mind if I pick something?
She cocks her head.
Fortunately, she agrees with another nod.
How about? Kuro?
No, that's too easy. Shade?
Nah, cringe.
Daniel tries to think of things other than going by her color scheme of black hair and fur. Her ears twitch as she waits patiently for Daniel's choice. Alright, don't ask me why, but I think...
Hecate.
How does that sound?
She cocks her head.
He explains, where I come from, ironically enough, the name comes from another country's goddess of night, magic, ghosts, and some other stuff. And it sounds like a name that fits you. She repeats the name, Hecate.
Hecate.
Will that work? She nods in agreement.
Hecate. Daniel.
Daniel Hecate. She gestures at herself with a small smile, sniffling as she wipes tears from her eyes. Daniel smiles, confirming warmly, Great. Now then, Hecate, I'm planning on pushing further into the fortress? Any objections? She shakes her head, gripping her dagger once more, but eagerly this time.
Good.
We'll have to be careful, but I have plenty of supplies for both of us, so as long as you don't hurt me, I'll gladly work with you to clear this fortress. So, let's get to work. She nods eagerly. Hecate, as she's going by now, follows stealthily as Daniel stalks through the cavernous hallways of the citadel. He doesn't even seem to know where he's actually at. But he's friendly, and he's helping her advance where before, she was unable to progress beyond the first corridor. It's a jumbled mess of rubble and debris, a de facto labyrinth for their tiny forms, but they're making their way. Her senses are much higher than Daniel's. She can see almost perfectly clearly in the dark, where he can only make out a light glow. She never really thought about it, but when Daniel mentioned it, nearly every living thing does seem to glow a little in the pitch-black darkness of truly dark areas, like the enclosed hallway they're in presently. Because she can see everything clearly anyways, she never really noticed the faint glow. However, in contrast to the singular living thing that doesn't glow, it is just noticeable enough. Given that Daniel can't see their obstacles without a small bead of bioluminescent moss he's using to watch his footing, and he's moving slowly and quietly, the faint glow of the enemies would be much more significant. She wishes she could talk to him. Or at least, that he could understand her. She has so many questions. He seems to be stronger than her, and yet, he doesn't even have any magic whatsoever.
He doesn't glow.
He doesn't cast spells.
And he doesn't strengthen himself.
Even now, having finally been fed a decent meal and allotted some sleep, Hecate can tell her own mana is back up to normal, maybe even stronger. He fed her easily the best food in her life. She also felt like she tasted something when she first woke up that smelled slightly alcoholic, but that would mean.
She flinches.
Did he use potations on me? Doesn't he know? She can't say anything right now. They're sneaking around a belinken, a predatory shelled creature that typically can't move very fast for very long, but it can pounce. It's presently eating a goblin that it seems to have captured. The belinken flinches, snapping its gaze directly towards them when Daniel's boot scuffs a piece of rubble. He freezes, and Hecate also halts, watching the belinken with sharp eyes. Daniel knows where it is, but he can't see it. She can see it, and he's relying on her to instruct him. Instead, he slowly pulls out the strange thing from a hard leather pouch on his hip. He whispers, Hecate, cover your ears. She glances at him, and his gaze is locked towards the belinken. It's snarling and sniffing, pondering where they are through the darkness.
Do it. Quickly.
She flinches, following his instructions. He has laid traps, tricked monsters into pits, ambushed ogres and goblins, and otherwise worked flawlessly with Hecate to keep them both alive and annihilating everything they've come across over the last few hours. She pats her hands over her ears as they lay flat on her head, and Daniel glances at her only once as the belinken begins stalking in a non-direct path towards them with some haste. He gives her an approving nod, watching for the belinken to be close enough. It stalks towards them on all 5 of its legs, keeping its striking arms ahead of it and ready to claw or snatch whatever made the noise. One meal is a good place to be for a predator, but a second meal isn't something to simply pass on when its first meal can no longer escape. In spite of his disadvantages, Daniel's arm holding the strange metal thing that stinks of chemicals and metal instantly swings towards the monster, pointing the item at the Belinkin. It's in his visual range, but it's almost in striking dash.
Boom.
Hecate yelps in terror as fire and thunder explode from the end of Daniel's small tool, and the Belinkin screams as it flops onto its back and shell, swatting its striking arms and legs around, but it seems to have lost all control of its own mobility and is simply flailing. For the briefest moment, the entire hallway of the citadel that they're in was lit up, and the most terrifying and painful sound Hecate has ever heard startled the life nearly completely out of her. After a few moments of struggling in futility and flinging blood around, the Belinkin finally stops moving. Hecate blinks for a long time, staring at the lifeless body. Daniel casually prods it with his boot, and it doesn't move. Thus, he withdraws one of his void bags from his shouldered void bag, and he stores the monster without another thought. He then looks at Hecate, asking softly, "You okay, Hecate?" She nods with a stunned expression, still covering her ears.
She is terrified. She is stunned.
She has many more questions. She is afflicted by severe confusion. Daniel's tool isn't a magic wand. It didn't produce any magic. And like him, it doesn't have any mana embedded in it except for trace amounts in some of the materials in its hollow construction. And regardless, it had killed a Belinkin in a single blow. Belinkins armor themselves for a reason. It is part of their nature. They can take dozens of arrows, their speed at close range is greater than virtually any swordsman. And Daniel killed it with one blow. Daniel pats the top of his head, and she realizes she's still holding her hands on her ears. She quickly releases them, allowing them to perk back up, but they immediately flop down to the sides in nervousness. She hesitantly points at Daniel's tool, and he looks at it, swinging it around rather casually, which causes Hecate to flinch.
This? Oh. No point hiding it, huh? This is a revolver.
It's a ranged weapon.
Not bad, huh?
She stares at him with her ears still low.
Not bad? Is he broken?
Daniel then asks, "Is there anything else in the immediate area, Hecate?" She flinches, looking around quickly. She shakes her head, saying, "No." He taught her yes and no, since they're simple words and can help their limited communication, particularly if she's outside of what he can see in the darkness.
All right.
Let's keep moving before anything comes to investigate. As if anything wants to find out what caused that noise. Hecate really wishes she could talk to him. He's fascinating and terrifying at the same time. Their next encounter is a moss crawler, a centipede-like creature that camouflages itself with moss and clings to walls. It's a surprisingly fast insectoid creature, but Daniel is able to avoid its attempts to corral him with its long body into its mandibles by jumping over its body and out of the way of its movements. Hecate finds a good position to avoid harming Daniel while getting close to flank the creature from behind it. She chants her basic fire spell, "Come forth, embers of the spirits. Bring forth the flames of your making." She channels her mana like normal. She makes the hand gesture like normal. She feels normal. However, a column of fire blasts forward that incinerates the moss crawler. Incinerates the moss crawler. Hecate stares ahead in astonishment as only a few small, smoldering sections of the insect remain, crumpling quickly to the sandy floor as Daniel catches his breath for a moment and wipes the insect's blood off of his sword. "Wow! That was amazing, Hecate. I'm surprised you needed my help earlier." She looks at him with wide eyes, her hand still outstretched as her own disbelief still holds fast. I'm not this powerful."
Daniel chuckles.
"You look like you just saw a ghost. Next time, try to keep some of it intact. I don't know if it can be useful yet. Though it is a big bug, so I'm not that upset, of course." He casually collects the remains in his monster storage void bag, seemingly oblivious to the fact that Hecate is still stunned. I'm not this powerful," she repeats in her dumbfounded stupor. I'll praise you, I'll praise you. You don't have to keep repeating it." He doesn't understand her words, though she understands his words fine. He suddenly pats her head gently, and she flinches a little, finally tearing her gaze away from staring blankly and instead, staring up into his eyes as he smiles at her.
"Good job, Hecate.
You really helped me out again." She stares up at him in disbelief.
She murmurs, I didn't do that, or I don't know how I did it."
Yes. I'll treat you to something tasty. How about we find a secure place to make camp for a break, huh? He doesn't understand her. He's treating her like a child.
But she nods.
She definitely won't refuse a treat and a break. She still needs to figure out what happened. They find a corner tucked into an alcove formed by fallen statues and furniture from the heyday of the castle, and he extracts his shell shelter, blocking the entrance once they're inside. From there, he lights a small fire for light, which vents out of a hole in the top, and he begins searching through rations in a void bag. He has many void bags within his main 2 void bags, from the looks of it, and he dedicates some of his idle time to sorting the ones he still needs to sort apparently. But in the present, he simply cooks some food for them both and makes something special out of a mix of ingredients while Hecate enjoys her meal. She watches him curiously. She's never met a human before Daniel, and she's pretty sure he's an actual human. According to the dragons that are her masters, humans are the 3rd weakest sentient race in the world, only surpassed in weakness by goblins and imps. And the dragons barely consider goblins sentient. That they can be organized into battle fodder is the only reason they qualify as such. However, Daniel can single-handedly slay some of the toughest races and monsters in the known world. Some, he outsmarts with the terrain and traps of his own design, and others, he utilizes his terrible revolver weapon, which ends even the most dangerous foes with no more than 2 thunderous attacks that can be used within seconds of each other. And although she can't detect any magic in Daniel, just being with him seems to be making Hecate stronger. Wait. Is it because he gave me a name? Or is it the food? Is this the power of human food? She looks at him as he toils idly, providing her plenty of food and a treat that sends a tingle through her whole body from the delicious and sweet taste. Tears find her eyes once more, and Daniel simply chuckles. Like that. She nods vigorously, and he chuckles, petting her head gently. Her whole body shivers happily. His presence, his touch and his food, all of it is so comforting and reassuring. She knew when she entered the citadel that she'd never win. She just wanted to try to survive long enough for the dragons to try and come, only to be killed by the feral Feldrock.
No one can beat a Feldrock.
Or no one except maybe. Daniel is very attentive and caring, and he helps Hecate remove her armor down to just the clothes so that she can sleep, and he tucks her in with a blanket and bedding. While she feigns sleep for a long time, she can't fall into unconsciousness for a long time. After she suspects Daniel is asleep, she peeks over her shoulder. Sure enough, he's seated in his usual spot with his revolver in his lap. His longer, heavy staff is leaning against the shell next to him, which he keeps close to him at all times in spite of the fact that he hasn't used it yet. Either way, Hecate knows what she wants. Daniel finds yet another surprise when he wakes up the following morning. Naturally, he is startled at first, but it's not like the first night of their meeting. Hecate was asleep on his lap against his hip, but she didn't faint during an attempt to kill him. Instead, she's curled up in a ball like a cat, with her big tail curled around her cheeks and the blanket covering as much of both of them as possible, even though it's a small blanket. He smirks, petting her head gently. She does seem to like it when he does, but this is going to bite me in the butt in a different way, isn't it? Regardless, Daniel does his best to let her rest. She's a magic user, meaning restoring her mana and stamina are highly valuable. He has a handful of the mana restorative potions, which should be highly useful if they're in a pinch. Although, he has to be careful of her small size. Regardless, he intends to also feed her antidote potions. Just 1 mana potion could prove to intoxicate the small fox-eared girl. And he doesn't even know what the consequences of feeding her antidote potions would be, since they're still an alcohol. They just detoxify the alcohol before it can affect the person. It doesn't mean that there aren't any harmful long-term effects. Of course, back on Earth, it would be unthinkable to feed a child alcoholic drinks, even if they're actually utilitarian in this world, which gives him pause as well. For now, she's doing well without any assistance from consumables. Daniel has plenty of revolver rounds remaining, plenty of food and water he seized, and of course, all but 2 of his rifle rounds. Assuming a Feldrock is comparable to a dragon, and assuming he can catch it off guard, he might be able to get them through this castle without either of them getting hurt. They eat a good breakfast, and Hecate sits against his side smiling. Yep. Definitely getting bitten later. Oh well. They clean up their camp after finishing breakfast, and they carefully sneak out of their alcove. They stay close, as they don't know if any new adversaries would come to investigate. They're in a hallway, which is winding, and Hecate listens carefully. She nods to indicate that it's safe, and Daniel pets her head. He leads the way, following the rule of right, taking right turns when presented with intersections, marking corners, and investigating until they come to a dead end or recognize an intersection or room they've been in. Thankfully, Daniel has been collecting the bodies, but Hecate's sense of smell can detect the blood of the monsters they've slain, even down to unique identification, so she can confirm a room quickly without them having to walk all the way across the humongous, pitch-black rooms. Daniel suspects it's not an ancient temple or tomb, since there are no traps. Instead, it seems to be an ancient castle, as all of the hallways have defensive structures, and the walls are sturdy. He has some idea of the layout from the directions they've been heading, but he can't see well enough to make a map, and he doesn't have material to do so, since paper is expensive and none of the demons had any. There are puddles and streams that are too deep for the young fox girl to cross without getting water in her boots or soaking her clothes. She rides on Daniel's back as he walks across, and she watches their front while holding his revolver. He taught her the basic means to use it, but he doubts she'll be willing to fire it. He'll have to be especially careful of her sensitive ears when he fires the rifle. The next room they come to that is a new room is too large to see across, even for Hecate. She can barely see the ceiling, but confirms there aren't any airborne targets. However, near the middle of the room, a rather large creature, given the hand gestures she shows Daniel, is eating something else. They make their way along the right wall, still following the rule of right, moving cautiously to avoid any trips or slips that would draw attention of the monster. While Hecate's burden is the darkness itself, Daniel is on offense once she informs him of the hazard. As such, he uses her faintly glowing outline from her magic power to determine where he can step. So far, it's worked quite well, even if he can't see the thing he's stepping on. Hecate knows to pick the best footing for him, and she has been doing an excellent job as his guide. Though something has seemed strange. She seems a little easier to see than before, as if she's glowing just a touch brighter. He figures he must be imagining it, since it's such a minuscule difference, and as long as the other monsters can't see the glow, then it doesn't matter. As they're sneaking, they avoid the eye lines of monsters that are also trying to avoid being noticed by the monster in the center. Daniel only knows for certain because it's hungrily snorting and tearing at flesh, indicating that there's definitely a monster there. Not that he doubted Hecate, but even he could tell that there's definitely a large creature bigger even than the big creature they defeated not too long ago. Suddenly, Hecate freezes, and noise fills the dark room. With a suddenness, a light enters the room. Unfortunately, it isn't a harbinger of comfort, like a lantern while lost in the woods or an angel bringing divine providence. This light glows with a dark blue hue, illuminating a flickering aura similar to smoke as a titanic being glides. The noise isn't from the newcomer though. It's from the many creatures that are able to choose to flee as they fearfully shriek and clamor to escape the room. The rest, like Hecate, are frozen in terror by a seeming power that gripped them before it was even visible. Its glow makes it visible all across the room, and Daniel instinctively shields Hecate with his body, trying to keep her from making noise as they stay hidden in their secluded little corner of the gigantic room. Fortunately, the great beast, easily the size of a 100-passenger plane, wasn't there for them. Its glow illuminated the room, and it revealed as it swooped in the beast that was feasting until a moment ago, a gigantic lizard the size of a bus. One capable of carrying a great deal of luggage and breathing fire during a siege, a drake. Daniel only knows that because he was repeatedly corrected by the demonkin he befriended that drakes are distinctly different from dragons. That said, drakes are of course, not to be trifled with. And, this one is cowering in fear as it tries to retreat away from the avian newcomer. In spite of the glow, the newcomer could most easily and quickly be described as a dragon. Its wingspan is vast, and it had actually pounced from the far end of the room into a glide, closing the distance on the drake before it could be noticed. It has a long broad tail, flickering as its smoky aura of magic light swirled around and seemingly through the surface of the tail itself. From what he can tell, Daniel suspects it's an illusion from magical power, similar to heat waves from a hot fire. It could even be exactly that, though a blue glow would indicate a terrifyingly hot fire. Its body is long and slender, jet black on its own and similarly wavering like a mirage over a grassy plain, and it uses its foreclaws to pin the drake down as flames burst forth from the latter's mouth in a desperate attempt to fend off the attacker that it couldn't possibly hope to outrun. In spite of its efforts, the flames glance off of the black dragon's wings, illuminating the monstrous beast in a hellish glow, further amplifying how dark its jet-black appearance truly is. If it wasn't glowing with light, it would be almost impossible to see in this castle until it was already far too late. The creature then pins the drake down on its side with a violent boom that rumbles the castle, drowning out the monsters crying and fleeing in every direction away from the drake and black dragon. It's likely they were lingering in hopes of eating scraps from the drake's meal, but now, the drake is going to become the meal of an apparent apex predator of the ungodly huge castle. The monstrous black dragon inhales as the drake again tries a desperate flame breath of its own. The dragon ignores it, exhaling a terrifying breath of pure white. Daniel can hear the crackling and creaking of ice. The drake is being frozen solid in an instant. The drake cries a pitiful shriek as its body freezes. That is until its lungs freeze, and its head collapses before turning to ice as well. The glow of the dragon shifts to a red color, and it shakes its head, dripping liquid that looks like it could easily be liquid nitrogen or something similar, instantly cooling the humidity in the air to a steam even as it evaporates quickly. With another deep breath, Daniel is brought back to his first real battle in this world. The black dragon's mouth fills with an orange glow, and pops and booms erupt from its mouth as flames pass across its frozen teeth and lingering liquid freezing agent. Just as quickly as it had frozen the drake, the dragon melts the ice with crackling pops, though it only partially thaws parts of the drake, before tearing into it with its teeth. Daniel watches for a moment, still hugging Hecate. The lingering flames on the moss and anything else flammable have created enough light to see, and the dragon is distracted presently as it enjoys its meal. He might be able to extract his rifle, but there's no telling whether the dragon is his target. Though, given the ferocity of this beast, it's unlikely that there's anything more dangerous than it in the castle. Of course, that would be easy to believe of the drake before seeing the scene before them now. Hecate whimpers, and Daniel hugs her, cooing softly, "Shoo, Hecate.
It's okay. I'm here.
I'll protect you." That resolves it. Whether or not he can defeat this thing, Daniel carefully draws his rifle off of his back. He definitely can't defeat it without his weapon at the ready. He's hoping, though, that the dragon is satisfied with its meal. He does his best to keep Hecate's face hidden and comfort her as she silently cries into his chest. She's still terrified, and after a short while, she finally falls asleep. That, or the terror causing her to breathe less than needed, led her to faint. Either way, Daniel keeps watch over her as the dragon contentedly feasts on the drake, melting more of it as it reaches bones. It doesn't finish the meal, though, and roars as it carries off the remaining half of the frozen drake, lumbering rather than flying as it drags the beast. It walks on its rear legs and effortlessly drags the drake with one hand. It's only as it's leaving that Daniel notices the edges of its head moving, almost like canine ears listening. It's not alert, but listening casually. After it leaves, Daniel shoulders his rifle and scoops up Hecate, carrying her in a princess carry with his revolver under her legs draped over his forearm. It's not ideal, but he'll be able to fight, even if he has to drop her to the ground momentarily. He reluctantly makes the decision he knows he needs to make, though. He heads in the direction that the black dragon lazily lumbered off to. He'll make camp again after a little while, and he can verify with Hecate what he doesn't really want to be true, that the black dragon isn't a dragon at all. Given that it was able to use two distinctly different elements so quickly, he's afraid he just witnessed a Feldrock in person. Daniel manages to find a good camping spot in the next hallway. An additional advantage to following the suspected Feldrock is that none of the monsters will be likely to appear again right away. Of course, his rational brain also knows that it's dangerously ludicrous for him to be pursuing that very same predator. But he imagines that, like the dragon, it's not particularly threatened by something of his size, and as such won't pay him any mind until hopefully it's too late. It's like approaching a running tank. Just because it's on doesn't mean it's a threat to Daniel. As long as it doesn't know he's there and doesn't perceive him as a threat, the driver of the tank in that case, he is nothing more than a part of the terrain, a stone on the road or a mouse in the thicket. This mouse, of course, has a semi-open secret. While common knowledge in his own world, with a moderately more limited pool of those who could craft them, the mouse known as Daniel has a bite that has already brought down 2 dragons. As Daniel checks over his weapons and equipment, Hecate begins whimpering. He looks at her, and it looks like she's struggling with a nightmare. It's likely she fell unconscious, and now, has fallen into REM sleep.
Daniel sighs. "You're so needy, Hecate.
You're lucky you're cute." He slides over to her in their shelter, and he carefully cradles her, petting her head. She calms down almost immediately, even squirming more into his lap to curl into a small ball with her tail wrapped around her body and face. He tucks the blanket over her again and continues petting her for a bit until even he falls asleep. Of course, he's awakened in the morning when she violently scrambles up to search around, disoriented by her new surroundings. Or rather, her relatively familiar and safe surroundings of a secure shell. She exclaims, "Daniel." She spins, finding him, and her eyes water instantly. She throws herself onto him again as she cries,
"Daniel.
Daniel." She fires off words quickly as she sobs, but it's clear it's whatever language she speaks. Daniel hugs her gently, petting her for a long while as she slowly calms down her breathing. Daniel checks with Hecate after she seems ready to talk. "Hecate, I think I know, but I want you to confirm for me. That wasn't a dragon, was it?" She shakes her head, clinging to his jacket's chest.
Then, she squeezes tighter, whimpering.
He finishes, "A Feldrock, huh?" She tries to curl into the tiniest ball she can, endeavoring to hide in Daniel's presence as much as she can. She chokes out one of the 3 words she knows, why yes.
"I see."
Daniel keeps petting her head, and he says softly, "Glad I know what it looks like now. We'll avoid it as long as we can." Daniel lies to try to comfort her. He doesn't intend to make her fight it, but from what he's gathered, Hecate can't leave the castle until she conquers it. He wants to help her, and although he now knows that the Dragon Lord isn't present, it's likely this Feldrock needs to be dealt with. It behaved more like a monster, even though it's supposed to be more powerful and intelligent than a dragon, which have been definitely sentient from the two he's met. After breakfast, though Daniel has no actual concept of what time it is at the moment, given how long they've been in the Dark Castle, they clean up and continue their journey. Once more, Hecate is leading them down the hallway. She has no idea yet that they're following the path of the Feldrock, and since its smell probably filled the whole castle the whole time, she was likely just afraid being in its presence. Of course, Daniel has also watched a lot of anime and read a lot of comics and manga, as well as a fair number of books. Something favored with the presence of especially powerful enemies, from the most evil of sorcerers in the most well-known series to the most powerful and dangerous monsters in fantasies of Eastern origin, is the aura or presence itself, a fear aura. Sometimes it is caused by magic, others the sheer overwhelming power of the being's presence. Either way, merely existing was enough to descend those before the being into a fit of fear and despair. Daniel has no way of knowing, but the idea came to him after he was comforting Hecate in her sleep. She and the other beings were so terrified, they dropped into balls of instincts, and Hecate even fainted. A magical effect would explain why Daniel's fear was only from his survival instincts as a small being facing a monster, but because he was able to isolate his fear with the knowledge that there was almost no chance it would take interest in them, it was a normal level of fear, rather than crippling. With the exception of the drake, which managed to meagerly fight back, everything else had no choice but to panic in the face of the monster. If he was on the mark, then he wonders if Hecate would be able to overcome her fear. In games, certain abilities of one character could boost the morale of another, making the latter more resistant to fear. In essence, it would be described as a song or words of encouragement, or even a spell. Daniel can't cast spells, but he can encourage her with words if it's enough. He doesn't know the true source of her fear, but he'll have to try. Either way, his goal for the next time they encounter the Feldrock is to relieve Hecate of the burden forever. Hecate nibbles on jerkied meat that Daniel gave her at request. He taught her several words, but this one he taught her a quick sign, since she was struggling to learn all of the words she needed to communicate with him. She was nervous, and his words seemed to soothe her, but just as quickly, they melt away, like a joke or story that gives her too much joy to be focused on remembering every detail. She can fumble through words that she can remember some of the syllables, but it's easier to just rub her tummy when she wants a snack. Daniel is quick to accommodate, and it allows them to keep exploring. She's been eating more though. Being on edge is making her nervous, and to distract herself, she's been unconsciously asking for food. The Feldrock was just as terrifying as described. She couldn't even breathe properly in its presence. She was certain she was going to die simply from the oppressiveness of its terrifying presence. Instead, she awakened in Daniel's arms. He had cradled her in her sleep because she was having a nightmare, which she had already forgotten by the time she woke up. Though she cried almost immediately, she was immensely relieved to still be alive and to have Daniel by her side. It's strange though. The hallway they've been walking in has been eerily quiet. The Feldrock's scent and lingering magic fill the whole of the citadel. She wouldn't be able to pinpoint it until they were already on top of it. And then, if it wanted to kill them, it would merely take a sliver of its deadly power. Daniel's metal wand was powerful and peculiar, or revolver as he calls it, but there's no way it possesses the power to take down the Feldrock. She knows he's keeping her company, but she ultimately knows how their journey together will have to end. He'll have to leave eventually, leaving her trapped alone in the citadel once more. Neither of them stand a chance against the Feldrock itself, and Daniel isn't bound to the citadel by a command given to a slave. That said, he has kept her company for a long time already, and though he can't understand what she's saying, she enjoys something she says to him every morning. She'd be too bashful if he could understand, but because he can't, she confesses her admiration and love for him in a small prayer of selfish desire to keep him around for yet another day longer, and she's able to sleep at night knowing that he stayed all the way through. Feeling particularly affectionate again, she tugs his sleeve softly. "Daniel, thank you for staying with me. I love you." He looks at her garner for attention, and he smiles. "We haven't conquered the castle yet, so be careful, right?" She nods, whispering affectionately, "I'll never leave your side. Please don't leave mine."
He sighs.
"Someday, I'm going to ask you to tell me what you've been saying. I can tell it's the same handful of phrases every day. I'm not an idiot." Thankfully, the darkness hides her blush from the human, but she walks close to him as they continue down the hallway. Ahead, a room is producing light that is leaking into the hallway, likely either an actual room with windows or a hole from damage. They've ascended pretty high in the citadel, though Daniel doesn't seem to realize that they've actually climbed up. He has just been following the path. According to legends that Hecate overheard, the Citadel was once an ancient magic fortress belonging to the Feldrox. With their powers, they were able to power a special core that prevented invasion by monsters and pests. The only reason the Citadel fell, supposedly, was because a dragon schooled in the magic arts of the Feldrox betrayed them somehow. But that is ancient history, and at best a story Hecate has heard only by piecing together tidbits. She suspects that in the off chance the Dragon Lord had believed that she could win, he would come and reactivate the core, which would have an unknown number of benefits over the castle they currently occupy. Of course, he also clearly wasn't trying that hard to conquer the Citadel, as Hecate alone stands no chance of success. If anything, he's getting rid of her. As they approach the room emitting light, Daniel quickly darts to the wall, approaching the corner cautiously. For once, rather than his revolver, he draws the long metal staff into his hands, holding it in a strange posture. He peeks around the corner, pulling back just as quickly. He takes a deep breath and calms himself. Curious and cautious, Hecate cautiously sneaks towards the large opening. She peeks around the corner as well. Fear grips her soul. The very ability to hear drains from her ears. The very ability to see narrows to a small, narrow tunnel, locked on the source of her terror. Every hair on her body begins to tingle and stand on end. Her broad tail, having regrown some of her missing fur, puffs up to provide a bigger presence, but also to allow her to shield herself if she needs to. Assuming she even could attempt to defend herself, that is. When Daniel told her of the Drake managing a futile defense attempt, she hadn't seen any of it. She was so tunnel-visioned in fear. Now, her heart is pounding once more, and her voice squeaks. She's suddenly yanked back, and Daniel sits her down against the wall, cooing quickly but as quietly as he can, calm.
Stay calm, Hecate. It's okay. It's all right.
We can do this. You and me. She begins to cry, and tears pour from her eyes as she shakes her head vigorously.
No. No. She cries. No. Sure.
Please, I need you to stay quiet. You saw, didn't you? This is our chance.
No.
She cries, and he hugs her to his chest, muffling her cries as she balls into his jacket. She continues to cry, no. No. Into his chest over and over again. She can't even think of anything else to say. Is she trying to convince him not to even try it, or is she trying to deny its existence? She wouldn't be able to say. She can barely process anything. Her only rigid stone in a tumbling rockslide is Daniel, her only friend in the world.
The one she truly loves.
The only one she could love after the life she's lived. In spite of how ugly and small she is, he still treats her so kindly. Daniel finally extracts himself, whispering, Hecate, I agreed to help you conquer this fortress, didn't I? That thing's an obstacle. I know you don't believe me, and you don't have to. But, I won't give up without trying.
All right.
She shakes her head, unable to form words anymore as she sniffles and whimpers, trying to keep her breath. How could you even think something so crazy? Why can't we just stay like we were?
Like we are?
She can't get the words out at all. She doesn't need to conquer the Citadel. The Dragon Lord was never going to check on her progress. If she could find a happy medium of surviving with someone she cares about. However, Daniel pulls her head to his, and his lips touch her forehead, causing a spark to pass through her body. At least, that's how it feels. She has never felt anything like it. The closest is when Daniel holds her and pets her head.
But, this is different.
It burrows deep into her soul, growing there like a small swelling feeling. It leaves her speechless and unable to move. And it is that moment in which Daniel makes his move, quickly darting around the corner while Hecate is stunned. She finally snaps to, finding his magic bag on the ground in front of her. His words finally processed through her brain, even after he's already around the corner. Just in case, be safe, Hecate. First and foremost, take care of yourself. She scrambles to collect the bag.
And no. She whispers.
She starts to fearfully crawl towards the corner again. She needs to stop him, but it's already far too late. He's already around the corner. All she can do is try to call him back. But the image flashes through her mind. It's there, the most powerful being in the world. It may be feral compared to the Feldrox of legend, but it still keeps the dragons away from the Citadel, the last and most powerful stronghold of the mythical race.
Go. He needs your help. He's going to die. Get him to come back. You have to.
He's given you all you have now.
Move.
In spite of her desires, her fear keeps her frozen steadfast. Tears fall from her cheeks as she tries to force the courage to go to him and pull him back. He is committing suicide, and all for a foolhardy.
Boom.
Hecate leaps away from the corner in terror as the single loudest noise she has ever heard thunders from beyond the corner. It pierces her ears, shakes her body, and rattles her bones. It was undoubtedly the power of a Feldrock. It was the very voice of not just thunder, but the god of thunder in a fit of anger. Hecate's ears are ringing, and she can't help the cries of agony from the pain in her ears, the jolt on her body, and the tearing in her heart. In an instant, everything she's ever had is suddenly.
Boom!
Hecate is startled by another sudden shout of the thunder god, which easily breaks through her momentary deafness from the first attack. Again, it unmistakably came from the next room, where Daniel disappeared to.
A second attack.
A second attack between Daniel and the feral Feldrock. Daniel, a human without any magic in his body, survived an attack from a Feldrock. Hecate's mind is stuck.
She can't process. She feels numb.
It's unthinkable that a human would be able to survive a single attack from a Feldrock. It would be more unthinkable to hope that the sound, which shares similarities with Daniel's revolver, was actually him launching his own attack. A deep rumble fills the ground, and she can barely hear the collapsing of something heavy, though her ears are still ringing more than not. Hecate finally scrambles to the corner, nervously peeking her eyes with her ears folded back, trying to lower her profile as she reveals her face. White smoke is filling the room heavily, obscuring everything. Hecate's eyes water, but something seems off. She can sense the magical power of the Feldrock, but it isn't drowning her soul in a flood of fear, nor is it enveloping her in a blanket of darkness. Instead, she can see it like a fading fire in the distance. And Daniel does his best to comfort Hecate. She knows now that they've found the Feldrock. While it was his intention, he had hoped Hecate would have been able to resolve herself. But then, maybe the Feldrock does emit a fear aura or something of the like. Even now, it's only sleeping, and Hecate couldn't even bear to glimpse it without shutting down in panic. She was crying, and she's still hyperventilating. It may not get through to her, but he reassures her, "Hecate, I'm going to kill this thing for you, okay?" He kisses her forehead, and she locks up, stunned. The tears don't stop flowing, but he can't waste time. There's no telling if or when the Feldrock will wake up. Now is the perfect time. He takes the magic bag off of his waist and lays it in front of Hecate. She can use it if he doesn't make it. But he's optimistic. Assuming dragons were capable of killing Feldrocks, that would indicate physical attacks. And although it was difficult, he was able to make pseudo-sabot rounds with shards of dragon teeth for a handful of the rounds for his rifle. Thankfully, dragons seem to go through teeth similar to sharks, so they have lots of extras and loosened teeth of all sizes, depending on what they eat. Daniel takes one last stabilizing breath for himself. He's admittedly scared, but he's scraped by in this world a few times now. At this moment, he has the advantage, and he's convinced he can win. He just has to be mentally prepared and ready. Daniel whirls around the corner, quickly jogging as quietly and quickly as he can to get closer. The Feldrock is still sleeping on the big pedestal at the back of the room, seemingly napping in the sunlight that is pouring in through a massive hole that is acting as a skylight. Seeing it in clear daylight, the Feldrock is truly majestic. It reminds Daniel of a black-winged version of a monster in a video game he liked, a dragon-like being that shared many traits of a fox. The Feldrock has raven-like wings on its back, curled in against its torso and obscuring its arms and legs as it naps on the pedestal. And its big, broad, bushy tail is curled around its body. Though it looks properly like a dragon in most respects, it reminds Daniel quickly of a certain companion of his. However, he can't think about that right now. Whether she's somehow related to Feldrocks or not, Daniel promised he would deal with this one. He drops to a kneel when he's in a comfortable range. His rifle isn't actually rifled properly, and he didn't have the luxury of machining any of the equipment or stamping out the bullet casings. Instead, he forged them all in a manner similar to making a cannon loaded with mini cannons, in a simplified sense. It was the best he could do with his means, but it does the job, and he already has 2 dragons and a drake under the strike of his modern weapon's unprecedented firepower. Daniel lowers into a prone position on his stomach, carefully taking aim. The Feldrock only shifts a little. The way it's laying, its chest is exposed in a large enough area for him to see. He knows many of the creatures of this world are structurally similar to their earthly counterparts. In general, the hearts of most terrestrial creatures are located in their chests. If Daniel can do enough concussive or traumatic damage to the chest, there's a high chance he can stop the heart of even ferocious beings like a dragon or a Feldrock, he hopes. He's relying on the penetration of his modified rounds. And in his prone position, he won't be able to escape, meaning his only option is to launch as many attacks as he can in quick succession. Daniel's rifle doesn't have a magazine, unfortunately, because it was too complex to assemble the extractor and other parts of the bolt, let alone the pieces that are supposed to allow only a single bullet to feed in from the magazine, instead of jamming the bolt with 2 bullets trying to load at the same time. So, he feeds each bullet in through the breech after the previous shot is extracted. In this case, he'll have to cycle the bolt, reload, close the bolt, and aim all in as little time as possible. He grips 2 bullets in his left hand, ready to reload as quickly as possible.
Now or never.
Daniel takes careful aim down his iron sights. That's the other major reason he wants to be close for his shots. Without rifling and machine tolerances, he can never hope to be able to take out targets at over a mile away, in spite of his rifle's power easily being capable of putting a bullet that far away with deadly power. He puts makeshift earplugs into his ears. Daniel's courage wavers, but he boosts himself with a silent conversation in his head.
Hey Daniel.
What you been up to this week?
Oh, invaded a castle.
Murdered an unkillable mythical god monster.
Ate some dragon meat. The usual.
Daniel pulls the trigger.
Boom.
The blast hits fast and hard. The recoil kicks like a direct shot to his shoulder. Smoke and fire fill his vision.
Daniel can't delay though.
His right hand snaps up to the bolt, ripping it up and back as fast as he can. He can see the glint of the empty casing fling out of the breech, and he slaps one of the spare rounds he has in his left hand in as quickly as he can, slamming the bolt forward and down. He ensured to put enough strength into it right away. He can't have it stick on him and cost him precious time. The shadow moves, startled awake by the first shot. It raises its head, bellowing a confused roar. Daniel fishes in his non-magic shoulder bag with his left hand as he aims with his right, pivoting against the bipod anchor. As soon as he can definitively define the Feldrock's shape as it still is trying to make sense of its sudden attack, Daniel fires again.
Boom.
The Feldrock cries out in startled pain. Without a thought, Daniel pounds the canister he fished out of his bag on the ground, and it immediately begins billowing thick white smoke. Daniel casts it just in front of himself and scrambles to his feet, darting to the side, withdrawing and throwing a couple more. The room begins to fill with a cloud of smoke, and Daniel continues his strafe out behind the Feldrock. It looks like it's lowering its head, and he reloads the rifle with his 3rd round on the run. The ground shakes as something impacts, perhaps the Feldrock stomping or slamming its tail. Daniel takes a couple of breaths to pump himself up and charges towards the Feldrock's back, and in a moment of surprise, he stumbles to a slow stop. Blood is pooling on the pedestal, and some is already pouring down over the edge of the pedestal. It's not especially high up, and Daniel is able to climb up with ease. The humongous, bushy tail of the giant being is like a giant pine tree, but pitch black, and all at once, Daniel is certain of several things that he should be more surprised by, but he needs to finish the fight. Daniel keeps the rifle trained on the Feldrock's chest until he can clearly see its head. The creature is truly humongous. In all honesty, it's a tragedy that he is killing it. It's majestically beautiful, and though it behaved like a monster and was Hecate's true obstacle to claiming the castle, it is likely a treasure of this world in its own right. Once Daniel is approaching its head, he aims at the head. He can see where his shots are dribbling blood, but it's clear that his hopes were founded. The real damage was done inside.
A human?
Daniel flinches, halting. He feels sick almost instantly. Why?
You were sentient.
The eye opens slightly, and Daniel's grip tightens on his rifle's grip, ready to squeeze the trigger. Fortunately, it seems to have no strength remaining. In a sense, yes, but in effect, no.
I don't understand, but if we can talk, hang on. I have some potations. Do not fret, human.
You've done the right thing. I am not this child. The child before you was lost, alone for all his life. He never had a single guiding voice, only the death of those around him. Suddenly, the Feldrock's eye color changes, and the voice shifts a little. Feldrocks are unique in this world. The life energy of those we fell in battle is absorbed into our own. The child before you was present in its egg when the last of us died. Without guiding voices to care for it, it was already powerful, but unable to do anything but become feral. Daniel listens patiently. He's cautious, but the Feldrock hasn't moved a muscle. Again, the eye color changes once more. A feral Feldrock is the epitome of danger in this world. Every creature it destroyed, it gained more power. Eventually, it would become something unstoppable that would threaten this entire world. Daniel is silent for a long time. He finally replies, I understand.
But, the girl.
You've done the right thing, and we will not cease to be. It'll be some time before the girl can hear our voices, but we will aid her when the time presents itself. So it's true. Hecate is?
Yes.
The little one near you is a Feldrock child. Sounds about right, thinks Daniel to himself. Suddenly, the first voice of the Feldrock makes the grim request.
Finish your mission, human.
The citadel is now yours, and will answer your call behind this pedestal. Our power, as well as that of this child, shall become that of the girl Hecate.
Are you sure?
If you can control. This child is unconscious. The extent of our control, even if he were merely asleep, is what you see now, and would risk awakening him.
Finish your mission, human.
You will know our words when we are able to speak to your companion. You won't manipulate her, will you?
No.
We were a peaceful race by nature, but were forced into war. If we can cling to existence through one child.
Time is short, cuts in the third voice.
Finish your work, human, and thank you. It is tragic, but thank you for freeing this one from madness. And please, don't let his form go to waste. Daniel hesitates, but he nods gently. I look forward to the next time we are able to talk. Even indirectly. Take care of him and Hecate, and please rest in peace. With that, Daniel makes sure to aim carefully. This time, he wants to end all suffering as instantly as possible. He aims for the eye towards the mass of the skull, the softest point, and in towards its brain. He can see the color fade from its eye, and he pulls the trigger.
Boom!
As Hecate stares at the shadow beyond the white smoke being backlit by the sun, she's ripped out of her trance by a third shout of the god of thunder. She reacts by flailing back, but suddenly, her heart races anew. This time, it's not pure fear. Her feet and hands move on their own. She scrambles up and sprints across the massive room, darting through the smoke. Every step, she picks up speed as resolve washes over her. She's not thinking as she does, but her thoughts begin to catch up.
No. Daniel. I have to save him.
She flashes through the room, putting herself between the Feldrock and Daniel as she unleashes all of her magic in every element she can summon. Fire, stone, lightning, darkness, ice, wind, water, light, death, all but healing magic. While she does so, she uses her body to push backwards into Daniel, forcing him away from the magical monster. It only registers as she and Daniel flop onto the ground below the pedestal and he wrestles her arms to stop her.
Hecate. Hecate. Calm down. It's over. It's dead.
She finally cuts off the elemental magic with a final fizzle of fire, glancing over her shoulder at Daniel as he hugs her arms to her with his own.
We did it, Hecate.
The Feldrock is dead. Hecate looks up at the pedestal, where even now, the Feldrock hasn't moved. It didn't shift when Hecate launched her attack.
It didn't flinch.
It didn't sigh. It didn't wake up. It's not even breathing. And now that she looks, its blood is pouring down the pedestal.
It all sinks in.
The god of thunder is none other than the sorcerer currently hugging her. His staff, which launched 3 consecutive and deadly attacks, is the item that called forth the wrath of the gods themselves, striking down the most powerful living creature in the world. Daniel holds Hecate for a long while, and she finally blinks her disbelief away.
She looks over her shoulder. Daniel. It's dead, Hecate.
The citadel will soon be ours. Her eyes water, and she twists in his arms to hug him.
Daniel.
She begins sobbing. He doesn't seem to understand, or he feigns ignorance at least. She's not crying because she's happy. She's crying because she thought she had lost him forever. Which, of course, is cause for happiness that it wasn't the case, but she still hasn't gotten over the terror and feelings of loss. After a while, Daniel finally urges her to let him up. We need to collect our spoils, right? Don't want anyone else to come after us. He takes his magic bag back from her, and he extracts one of the giant ones.
He murmurs,
Both of these are getting kind of full. Here's hoping. He begins putting the Feldrock into the bag.
A Feldrock.
One of the deadliest and most powerful beings in the world. The monster that dragons fear. The Leviathan that Daniel defeated. Like it was nothing more than a goblin, he stows the feral Feldrock's corpse and collects his terrible staff. He slings it over his shoulder and looks at Hecate, who is still standing in a dumbfounded stupor. She spots a glint on the floor, and she jogs to it. It smells of metal and chemicals that have burned, and she picks it up. She jogs to Daniel, offering it to him.
He smiles. Oh, thank you.
That's a spent shell casing though, so it's not a crisis if I don't collect them.
She cocks her head.
He takes it, sticking it into his magic bag, and says, it's not useful unless I can reload it. He pulls out a similar tube-shaped object, except that it has a cone sticking out of the top.
She flinches.
Peeking out of the tip of the cone is a bone-like material, though its coloring could only be a tooth. He's using dragon teeth as catalyst? That would make sense. But how powerful does someone need to be to?
She swallows hard.
Daniel seems so calm and normal. He's his usual self, even after what he just accomplished. He then looks towards the back of the room. Now, to deal with that. There, standing next to a strange pillar with a glowing light on the surface, is a humanoid golem with a rigid head instantly reminiscent of a Feldrock. Without a second longer of pause, Daniel walks towards the golem. Hecate jumps into step with him, but she keeps behind him, whimpering, "Daniel.
It'll be all right, Hecate.
I have it on good authority that this will go all right for us." As he approaches, the golem looks at them. It begins spouting words, but all of them are different languages for the words, "Please speak." Daniel asks, "Any chance you can understand it, Hecate?" Suddenly, the golem says in its mechanical hollow voice, "Eastern Imperial Trade.
Acknowledged.
I am the caretaker of the Citadel. As my master asked me to ensure the survival of knowledge, I am to assist you in maintaining the Citadel. Please place your hand here, master." It gestures at the pillar next to it. Daniel looks at Hecate.
Well, go ahead.
Flabbergasted, Hecate glances at the golem and then at Daniel.
And then she repeats. What's wrong? You wanted the Citadel, right?
Looks like to truly conquer it, we have to do what this guy says.
She shakes her head.
She tries to gesture with her hands as she speaks in Demon Common.
No. Daniel. We can't.
It could be cursed. The golem looks at her, and then at Daniel. Daniel states, "I can't understand you, Hecate. Just go ahead and touch it."
No.
The golem translates, "The young one is afraid of curses, but I assure you this citadel is carefully moderated."
See. No. Snaps Hecate.
That's exactly what it would be programmed to tell us.
She tries to block him. Daniel sighs.
"Mr. Caretaker, the citadel can be transferred again, right?"
Correct.
The procedure is the same.
Good.
With that, Daniel instantly picks Hecate up effortlessly and sets her to the side. He steps up, fending off her frantic attempts to stop him. He places his right hand on the pillar, and it instantly glows. The golem lets out a sigh of immense relief as its shoulders slump, shocking both of them. It states, finally, "It's been so long since anyone has enabled our functions. Would you like to engage maintenance protocols, Master?" "You're an artificial intelligence?" asks Daniel in surprise. Hecate has no idea what that meant, but neither does the golem by its answer.
Artificial? Not quite.
My former Feldrock masters engaged in many art forms. In this case, I am a soul-bound golem. A volunteer became the golem before you, in charge of the Citadel's maintenance program. Would you like to begin?
Not yet. Soul-bound. Yes.
It's a process by which a living soul is crammed into a golem, right? A living being was turned into a power source. Your surprising knowledge aside, your interpretation is a little inaccurate.
I am still myself.
I did in fact volunteer, and I am proud. I would have died otherwise, and instead, became a faithful and honored servant of the Feldrocks and their most precious home. What about your life?
Family? Friends. I lived my life.
I have no regrets. I've been waiting centuries for someone to be able to restart maintenance.
What happened?
As you can see, the Citadel fell into a state of disrepair in the last war. An apprentice of one of our younger masters, a dragon, learned enough to disable the Citadel, and they were able to defeat all but 3 of the masters here. The second eldest perished today. You considered that one your master?
Indeed.
Though communication was impossible, it was a child of my original masters. I would have maintained its home had it simply activated the system. Daniel nods now that he knows the basic gist of things. I have lots more questions, but I'll pick your brain in a minute. I want you to transfer control of the Citadel to Hecate here. The golem cocks its head.
I cannot.
You just told me you could before I touched the panel.
Correct.
The procedure is the same. For me to recognize a new master, you will have to cease to exist. Daniel sucks his teeth, and Hecate flinches. She glances in terror between them both. Daniel turns towards Hecate, and she shouts no.
No, 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 no. No. No, Daniel. No. He chuckles.
I haven't even said anything. She points at him, saying in a fiery tone no. As they stare at each other, the golem finally chimes in. If I may, master, with your permission, I can add administrators to the Citadel systems. If killing you isn't an option to begin with, it's the next step down from the master. What can administrator do? Anything a master can, save override the master. Conversely, the master can override or veto any action of any administrator. And, only the master can assign new administrators. Those are the only differences.
I see.
Additionally, there are guest roles intended for villagers and servants, as well as intermediary roles that can be customized to the needs and desires of the master.
That's handy.
Obviously, I have already added your wife as a guest presence. All others in the citadel will be purged once maintenance begins. Repairs will follow.
Wife? Oh, you mean Hecate.
Please make Hecate here an administrator then, please.
Acknowledged.
If I might make a request, master.
Yes.
Please tell me how to activate maintenance.
Thank you.
Hecate watches as the golem guides Daniel through using the panel, as Daniel and the golem refer to it, and Daniel operates it as if it were something he's been using all of his life. It's strange, but then, Daniel is a strange person. If he was secretly a Feldrock, Hecate wouldn't be surprised at this point. It's a long process of finger swiping and tapping on the panel, activating this function, and re-establishing that channel. While Daniel seems to understand, it all flies over Hecate's head. She watches nervously. She doesn't feel any different, now that she was an administrator of the citadel. Regardless, whatever they're doing seems to work. Suddenly, light fills the room they're in, not just from the sunlight. Magic stones on the walls and ceiling illuminate, filling the room with natural and comfortable light.
Daniel remarks, nice.
Can I change the brightness and color?
Of course, master.
And just like that, Daniel dimmed them to a soft blue color.
He chuckles. Look at that.
Feels just like home.
I'm surprised, master.
I didn't think humans had low-light vision.
We don't.
But, I like to keep my house a little darker, personally. It'd be a bit of a challenge to explain the whole thing. Though, this is a pleasant surprise. The citadel is yours to do with as you please, master. With that, doors open around them, and Hecate flinches, keeping her back to Daniel, the only safe direction in the world. Golems march in a small army. Some instantly begin making a loud whining noise, and Hecate snarls. The golems that started making extra noise are sliding something across the floor, while the others march into other locations.
Some crawl up the walls.
Others have swords and shields, but they march past Daniel, Hecate, and the caretaker, splitting up at the hallway and continuing on their way. The caretaker explains, maintenance protocols active. Are there any further allies in the citadel, master?
No.
But if there are any sentient races, I'd like your golems to try to communicate first and place them under arrest. We'll decide what to do with them. There are a handful of goblins, orcs, and beast folk, master. I expect hostility. If you can immobilize them and contain them, I'd prefer that. Can you speak every language?
Indeed.
The Citadel systems can translate intent from any language that processes thought. Even animals produce thought, though communication is generally much less successful, depending on the species.
I see.
I don't mind if animals and sentients flee, so please don't attempt to trap them if they are fleeing towards the exit. Understood, master, but what of their life essence? Daniel looks at Hecate. She flinches, pointing at herself. She asks, Daniel. Daniel replies, she doesn't need every drop of death. We'll manage. Can she really absorb all of that from here? This shocks Hecate, and she wants answers.
Daniel?
However, the golem answers him first.
No.
Specifically, the Citadel's magic channels collect the life essence, and it can be extracted at various locations. Shall I guide you to them? Later, thank you. I assume that includes what the other one accomplished.
Indeed.
Though, in both his and Lady Hecate's cases, some is absorbed on the spot if they were close enough at the time of death. Regrettably, only the magic channels were functioning all this time. Fortunately, this has created an enviable stockpile for Lady Hecate.
I see. Thank you.
Daniel. Snaps Hecate, demanding attention.
Daniel sighs.
Hecate, I don't know all of your circumstances, but I'm pretty confident you're a Feldrock. She stares at him, blinking only once.
She shakes her head. No. He nods. Yes. No.
Master speaks the truth, child. It is why you are able to naturally understand languages, even if you can't speak them. It's also why you can use all elements of magic with ease. It gestures towards the pedestal, where a couple of golems are mopping up blood and sweeping up ash and icicles. And, did you not notice your growing power as you and Master defeated monsters? Hecate fidgets. She glances at Daniel. It seems that Feldrox gain strength from those they defeat. And your tail and ears definitely looked like the one we defeated today. She twitches, and then she looks at her own tail, touching her ears. Daniel then asks the caretaker, is there a way to teach her spells here? It would be extremely helpful if she could learn the spell that teaches to speak and write. The caretaker nods in agreement.
Indeed.
The library has all of dash. It pauses. It has sustained damage. I won't make promises I can't yet guarantee, Master, but I shall have units catalog the contents of the library as soon as the library floor is cleared. While intruders are being purged or contained, please make yourselves comfortable in this room. Personal quarters are still being purged and will need cleaned. Daniel understands completely.
Thank you. Hear that, Hecate?
If we can find the spell for languages, hopefully you can learn it pretty quick. She nods with a slightly distant expression, still disbelieving everything happening. Daniel requests politely, I don't want to be too demanding, but is it possible for us to get some chairs then?
Of course, Master. Allow me.
The caretaker golem proudly serves, and it seems to give a silent signal to its workers. It then states, you also don't have to pass courtesy to myself or any of the other units. We exist to serve the Master. You say you were a person. I'd like to think we can get along better than mere master and servant. Thank you for everything so far. The golem cocks its head, but it bows its head politely.
Very well, Master.
Your courtesy is appreciated. After a few moments, a few more worker golems appear with a pair of chairs. They're not particularly fancy, but Daniel thanks them and takes a seat, positioning himself in front of the panel. From there, he asks the caretaker what functions are available to him. The caretaker guides Daniel through the various screens in the panel. Hecate tries to sit on her knees to watch, leaning on Daniel's shoulder to see better. Again, even though he didn't seem to know what the Citadel was before this day, Daniel operates the control panel like a natural, which the caretaker remarks on. Even Hecate notices when he deflects with a simple nervous chuckle.